Got one more minute and then I'll call the meeting. Okay, it's Tuesday, October 13th at 7 p.m. I call this meeting of the Wellfleet Select Board to order. First order of business is public comments, announcements, and open session. Public comments must be brief. The board will not deliberate or vote on any matter raised solely during announcements and public comments. Do I have anything? Helen? Go ahead.
Yeah, here I am. There's a ballot box now in the parking lot next to Town Hall. You can literally just drive up and drop your ballot in. This is in addition to the one that's next to the door, the back door to Town Hall. Thank you.
Okay, anyone else? Okay, not seeing any. I have one. Wellfleet has received a Habitat Community Partner Award for its commitment to affordable housing, and Authority and Elaine McElroy for the tireless effort they've put in to making strides in affordable and attainable housing in Wellfleet. Okay, and next order of business, Comprehensive Wastewater Management Plan Committee update. So I don't know, Scott's on here, and I imagine Kurt is on here. I don't know who'd like to speak first.
I don't see Kurt on here, but Scott Horsley is on.
Hey, Scott.
Hello, how are you tonight? Can you hear me all right?
Good. Yep, hear you great. What's been going on?
Hillary, I see Hillary on here. Hillary, would you like to speak first, or should I jump in?
You can go ahead and jump right in.
Okay, well, I think just for introduction again, Scott Horsley, I'm serving as a consultant to the town of Wellfleet, developing a targeted watershed plan. And we've been working with the Wastewater Committee and the Board of Health on developing strategies to address nitrogen issues. And we've identified about 6 or 8 projects that we reviewed with Mass DEP last week. And I think Hillary will agree with me, the meeting went quite well. I would say very well. The state seems to be really getting behind what we're talking about doing. And one of the projects that we highlighted is the 95 Lawrence Road project. And we've had some great discussions with the Housing Authority Committee. Some of you were on the meeting tonight and reviewed the Bowler report and have discussed that with the Wastewater Committee as well as the Board of Health. I believe the Wastewater Committee well, actually, I was part of it. They did meet recently and discuss this and did vote to support the third option. Just very briefly, Bowler Engineering reviewed a number of wastewater options for that project and looked at 3 primary alternatives. One was to develop a wastewater system strictly for the housing project alone. The second one was to develop a larger system that would include the housing project and 3 municipal buildings, the police, fire, and elementary school. And the third option was a larger system that would incorporate all of that, plus the opportunity to include some residential properties that are sort of uphill from the site. I should mention, and again, I think most people are aware, this project is located within the Duck Creek watershed, which is probably the most challenging one in the entire town to meet the nitrogen objectives. So the housing project alone, if we're to go ahead, even with an innovative and alternative system, would still add nitrogen to the Duck Creek watershed and would be sort of a net a net increase to that embayment, which is already in trouble. And frankly, we're having challenges meeting the targets. The other two alternatives that I mentioned, the larger project that includes the municipal buildings, and then the third one, including some of the residences, both. So, my view of this is that the second or third options provide a win-win opportunity, which I think is pretty unique in my experience, having worked really in many places across the state, to be able to develop an affordable housing project in a critical area and at the same time have that result in water quality improvements. That's not a typical outcome. As many of you know, a lot of these housing projects run head on with water quality issues. This one, I think, because of the engineering wastewater options, the town has the opportunity to, as I said, have its cake and eat it too, get the housing project, but also result in a net improvement in water quality. The Bowler report did provide cost estimates on all three alternatives, and without getting into great detail, although I do have the information if you want details, the third alternative, the larger project, really provides a much more cost-effective approach in terms of dollars spent relative to reduction in kilograms of nitrogen. And the numbers look very favorable compared to other municipal wastewater projects that we've seen all around the Cape. I can get into some of the detailed numbers, or I don't know. Hillary, do you want to add anything to that? I guess I'll stop there and see if people have questions or comments, unless you want to add anything, Hillary.
I would just add that the wastewater committee voted to support option 3, which is the larger system, because we get the best nitrogen removal and we get the most bang for our buck. And looking at the regulations coming down the road from Mass DEP, it seems to be the best solution. So we did meet with the Housing Authority folks on Friday night, and we all agreed that that's the system we'd like to move forward with, and we'll find a way to make it happen.
I guess I would just add one last thing, Mr. Chairman, if I might. I'm sorry.
Sure. No, please do.
Thank you. That is that the project can be designed and permitted in a way that is phased into those three phases. And I know there was discussion among the Housing Authority, concern about putting too much burden on the developer, where this might be put out to bid. And I think the intent here would be not to put any of that burden of the expanded treatment on the developer, but rather retain that as an option for the town to build. The idea would be to go for the larger permit that would incorporate all three of those components, the housing, the municipal buildings, and the residences. And then when and if the town's ready to actually invest in the larger expansions, that would be available to them. So this can be built, can be permitted in phases, can also be built in phases. So I just wanted to kind of clarify that, because that was one question that did come up, and a very good question during our last meeting. So I will stop there, Mr. Chairman, and see if there are any other questions. Be happy to try to answer them.
Okay, anyone from the board first? Looks like Helen, go ahead.
Hi there. So Scott and Hillary, I was sent the audio of the meeting that you had with so many DEP people, I believe, through the Cape Cod Commission. And it had all kinds of wonderful granular details. The only problem is that that's the first Zoom I've ever not been able to access. And I feel that, particularly on behalf of the wastewater committee, Fred Vanderschmidt was there, and Kurt Felix was there, and Hillary was there from Wellfleet, and everybody else was there from the DEP. And I understand why, it was a staff meeting and you needed to get work done. But what would be great would be if it could, that audio could be put up in an accessible way on the town, media webpage, so that the other people on the committee and the other people on the board, if they were interested, could listen to it. When you're doing the ironing or making supper. I would have liked to listen to it today, but as I said, it's a kind of a weird Zoom setup, and at no point could I listen straight through it. I've never had that kind of trouble. So would that be possible, please?
Yes,
It's
I will
not-
put it on the website, Helen.
Excellent. Thank you.
Ryan?
Yeah, so I watched the entirety of that meeting. I wish you got into a little bit more detail here, Scott. For the
Okay.
board, this is the first time that the wastewater committee has been before the select board in about a year, if I'm not mistaken. The plans changed significantly since a year ago. And I am very disappointed that Kurt isn't here either. So some of the issues are the plan as you're currently, I have a number of issues, but I would strongly recommend not implementing regulations for the Board of Health that are applied to the entirety of the town without going before the public first and bringing it before the select board. The Comprehensive Wastewater Planning Committee is an advisory body of the select board. It is not an advisory body of the other regulatory committees, even though they can definitely weigh in there. I do think there's a lot of positives that can be done by working together. The problem is that we've had very little communication coming out of the wastewater committee to us. I know the details of what the plan is currently. So to get into some specifics, at the meeting, Kurt told the DEP that an area in the gut, in the mouth of Herring River, was being dragged, dredged, and walked on, and that was negative, and that was causing eelgrass not to grow there any longer. And I just confirmed with the Shellfish Constable today that the entire area there is behind the no drag line. It is already a no drag area. And one of my concerns with that meeting is DP was talking about following up on this concern with the town, which we've now created a whole nother problem because somebody, rather than just taking a diplomatic approach of saying, all right, we'll look into it and I'll get back to you on that, literally interrupts the person talking about it and states that it's because it's being dragged, dredged, and walked on. Another issue is, so the DOT is currently we're in the process of working on the Route 6 Main Street reconstruction. The DEP has said in that meeting, did say that the DOT has a 5-year moratorium on newly resurfaced roads for any new curb cuts, and that might be in a situation where Wellfleet will have to lay down dry pipe underneath the Route 6 section. Kurt said that that was just, it's a direct quote, was just that intersection that was an extremely small area. It just happens to be where a culvert is. The total area is over 2/3 of a mile long. This is not necessarily a small project. It's a much longer project than just specifically the Main Street Route 6 intersection.
Hey, Ryan?
Yep.
Sorry to interrupt you. I just would like to, just as a point of order, get the update from wastewater and then maybe one point at a time so that it's just not a litany of things, just so that, we're not relitigating, especially because Kurt's not here to explain or whatever. I don't want to get into too much of the weeds in a sort of litany of things, but specific to 95 Lawrence Road project, which is what was just updated. Do you have anything, or is there anything point by point, just one point at a time that you would like Scott
to address? Not specific to the Lawrence Road project. I strongly support the wastewater wastewater's position in terms of the 95 Lawrence Road project.
Okay. So, Scott, would you like to respond?
Could I jump in here for some two quick questions or
Sure.
points? Thank you. Thank you, Ryan, for letting me in. I sit on the Cape Cod Water Protection Collaborative and also on the funding mechanism. And I think it's important to maintain the big picture that Wellfleet is going for the approval of the watershed permit. It'll be the second of only two on the Cape. Only Orleans has one. And then we're moving to funding and getting it in line for funding. And I've learned already from serving with Ryan on the Board of Selectmen that he is both conscientious and brilliant. But I think if some of Ryan's talents might be best used offline, maybe with the run-on-run one-on-one with Scott Horsley. Ryan, sitting on these two committees of the best, except for me, on the Cape, Scott Horsley and Horsley Witten are really spoken with reverence, and we're lucky to have them working. And I do know from serving with you, Ryan, that you're brilliant, but Wellfleet's doing really well. And in terms of updates, we did recently have one with many select board members present. I think you were there too. So it really isn't accurate. We haven't heard from them for a year. So I think we should focus on the positive, maybe take some of these concerns offline, take a deep breath and realize what great shape Wellfleet really, really is in versus other towns. I can tell you that from sitting on these two committees. And we want to pull with united oars and get our plans corrected, funded, and approved. Because, other towns would like that funding too.
All right. Well, if I may, just one last point, and then I'll sit back.
Yeah. Just try and, make whatever points that Scott can respond to, because he's the only one here that.
Yep. So, Scott, in your current calculation or the calculator you're using, how many kilograms of nitrogen reduction are oysters contributing?
I would have to refer to that, but I think it's around 1,500 kilograms total is the current what we have in there. And I might just add, Mr. Chairman, I didn't want to take too much of your time because I see you have a lot on the agenda, and Justina, thank you for your kind words. Appreciate that. I wasn't sure how much of a background to give here tonight, how much time to take, but I did prepare about a 5-minute slideshow that overviews more than the 95 Lawrence projects. If that would be helpful, I could do that, but I didn't want to do that because I thought there was a lot on the agenda and you wanted to talk specifically about 95 Lawrence. But if you'd like, I could take no more than 5 or 7 minutes to share my screen and just run through a quick overview. If you'd like to do that, it's completely up to you.
Sure. I think that would make sense to do, but let's just address the 95 Lawrence. I think we can do one round of this. I think I have a couple questions about it.
Mr. Chair, can I just finish?
Sure, yes.
Every 100 kilograms of nitrogen reduction being contributed by oysters represent a 2.5 increase in the oyster production overall. At 1,500 kilograms of nitrogen being reduced by the use of oysters would represent almost 38% increase in Wellfleet's oyster production.
So is there a question, Ryan?
No, that's it.
Okay. Helen? Helen's muted.
Yep. Helen,
Right, there we go.
there you go.
I'm unmuted.
Okay.
Scott, was your answer based on not potentially more oysters, but on the figures that you got from Nancy Chavetta, which are not really ballpark. It's a little more precise than that, although it can vary from year to year, for what's actually going on. So when you answered Ryan's question, saying there are 1,500 kilograms of possible of oyster mitigation. Were you referring to what we've got right now, based on what Nancy has given you in terms of figures?
No, actually, that is a projection over, I should mention, this is over a 20 to 30 year period. And I am actually working with Nancy about developing the specifics of that plan. We really don't have it yet, but that's a ballpark estimate of, I think, the range we're talking, but it does include some trajectory of, we did look at the history of, I believe, the last 12 or 14 years that she provided.
Yeah, what I'm interested in, if you don't have it, maybe this could be shared in the future.
Sure.
What are we benefiting from right now? And how good is that? Because without any additional complication having to do with people who live off what they make from shellfish farming and harvesting in the wild, we've got something going on now that other communities don't have. We have a huge number of oysters.
Absolutely.
And let's start there and not talk about doing more, which other communities, in my opinion, that would be a place to start, and not to put this in a watershed plan, because it depends on a whole lot of other things that may or may not be doable. But we do have something going on now. Other communities have to, create these situations. We don't. Thank you.
I just wanted to kind of stick to 95 Lawrence Road at first, but it seems like everybody wants to take things in whatever order, which is fine. But just to go back to 95 Lawrence Road, obviously at some point, the developer's not going to be paying for a huge percentage of this project if we do the third option. And as far as revenue sources for that, I imagine once the watershed plan is through, we can apply for some grants that might cover some of that. And then I know there's some money set aside from short-term rental tax that the state has been keeping separate from what the town gets in. And then the town is also receiving short-term rental tax. And I'm wondering if it would make sense to earmark any sort of amount of money as a way for the town to have a positive contribution into these systems, so that, some of the money, clearly short-term rental is a huge driver of housing issues and nitrogen issues. The development that takes place and the intensity of use at peak season. If it would make sense for the town to sort of say, X percent or X amount per year from this fund could be put into a fund to contribute towards nitrogen reduction, so the town can meet whatever shortfalls we have between grants and state money. Just an idea to throw out there.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. If that's a question to me, Mr. Chairman.
That's a question to you, yeah.
There are a number of, we've been talking a little bit about this. There are a number of sources of funding and financing. And I think I can represent accurately that our meeting with DEP included Millie Garcia, who's the regional director. And I think I was also on the phone with her today in another call, and we discussed Wellfleet. And I do believe that she sees Wellfleet as an opportunity, as one of you said earlier, this would be the second watershed permit. And I think she's really hopeful that this will move ahead. And along those lines, I think she'll support many of the funding opportunities that are out there, including SRF funding. You already mentioned the short-term rental tax money. There are various grant programs. Some of these loans also have so-called forgiveness, meaning you don't have to pay back part of them. I've heard a discussion of 25% forgiveness on some of the SRF funding as a possibility. So there's a number of sources of funding to finance these projects going forward. But the key is to get a watershed permit approved by Mass DEP to then enable that money.
So, so we will probably have some revenue that the town's going to have to pony up. And to me, it makes sense that that money comes from certain revenue sources that make sense rather than being just drawn from the general fund, but that there is some sort of money that's set aside from that specific tax of short-term rentals to go into, backstopping whatever it is. And I'm going to get off 95 Lawrence Road for a second, but I don't know if this is still the plan. I'd like to see your presentation, but I know the new nitrogen wood chip systems are kind of on the horizon, and transferring people's septic systems to those septic systems would be not substantially more expensive, but more expensive. And I'm wondering if maybe this is a way also, to use some of that funding in that area to offset the costs of people having to upgrade those systems into nitrogen reduction systems. So,
yeah, one of the strategies we've been discussing is a program of innovative and alternative septics, and I do have a one or two slides on that I can show, highlighting one of the technologies that does in fact use wood chip bioreactor technology, which, as you've indicated, Mr. Chairman, is showing very good results and a lot of promise. And the thought would be that these upgrades to these systems could partially be funded perhaps by the town as a contribution to nitrogen reduction as properties come up for repairs and upgrades. I've been working with Hillary on kind of the schedule and history of how many systems come before the Board of Health. And the thought would be to try to do this when those systems come in, as I say, for repairs or upgrades or expansions. That's the most cost-effective time to do this. And what we've been discussing is a possible cost share between the private property owners who have to comply with the regulations and then the town possibly making a contribution to this so-called enhanced innovative and alternative technology, which again, I do have a slide on that I can show to just explain that in a little bit of detail.
Yeah, so part of the reason why I pinpoint the short-term rental tax is because it would not necessarily have an increase in property tax. It's a separate revenue stream, right, and one that seems to be contributing to our nitrogen problems. So I got Kathleen on here. I'm sure she has something about 95 Lawrence Road. So I'll call on Kathleen right now. Hi, Kathleen.
Good evening, Mr. Chair and Wellfleet Board of Selectmen. I had the pleasure of attending the wastewater meeting last Friday with our 95 Lawrence Road task force. I want to say from the very beginning, I have been championing a septic for this site that would be state of the art. We do know that nitrogen is traveling and finding its way downhill into our embayments at Duck Creek, Mayo Creek, and Wellfleet Harbor. And we do know that adding 46 units of housing at that site is likely to increase a nitrogen load. We're having a very difficult time reducing our numbers right now with Duck Creek, Wellfleet Harbor, and Mayo Creek. This would be Wellfleet's first state-of-the-art cluster system. As Scott mentioned, it will be a modular build. We'll build first for the 46 units, and then we can build out as needed to include the elementary school, the police station, and the fire station, and additional houses and residents in the area. But putting in this system, while costly and expensive, is the right thing to do. We need to do due diligence on everything we can to credit going forward to get that watershed permit. It would be a significant thing for the town of Wellfleet to have. So we will figure out how to pay for this, and we will figure out how to get this done. I want to go back and say that while we've been given a hope that we'll get a MassWorks grant for the water expansion, we might also receive and apply for a Mass Housing Works grant to get this system built for the septic at 95 Lawrence Road. I fully did support a state-of-the-art IA system 10 or 9 months ago, but after hearing the wastewater committee's recommendation to go with the third option, I think in accordance with Hillary's comments, that DEP is going to be putting down much stricter regulations going forward. We'd be best to do this. So I hope the board will support the wastewater committee's recommendation for 95 Lawrence Road. And thank you for your time.
Okay, Gary Sorkin. Go ahead, Gary. There you go.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Yes. Oh, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I just wanted to thank the wastewater committee as well. I just wanted to correct a couple of things. It's not the Housing Authority, but it is the 95 Lawrence Task Force. That is the group that's interfacing with wastewater. The second is that the committee actually hasn't met as such, but I think I support what other people have said is if we can get this done and we can get it done in a timely fashion, it would be super for the town and for the project at 95 Lawrence. But I wanted to put both time frame and need in perspective. We hope to issue the RFP for the 95 Lawrence project after the first of the year. So that means that between now and let's call it January 15th, we need to develop a clear statement that we can provide to the developer that says this is how we're going to deal with wastewater for 95 Lawrence. So we need a vision for that. And my understanding, and maybe Scott can comment on this, is that Bowler, the consultant, is working on something for the 95 Lawrence RFP that we can incorporate into that. Is that the case?
I am not sure that, Hillary, you just sent me an email recently about a addition to their scope, and I think it does address this in part, but maybe I'd defer to you on that question if you're willing to take that.
Yeah, we did get an amendment from Bowler to give us the appropriate language to insert in the RFP so that we can get sort of this modular design with a public-private partnership headed in the right direction. So we are going to sign that contract once we approve of the language that was submitted to us.
Super. So we seem to be on the right path to having something that we can embed into the RFP to be issued around the first of the year.
And the work product from that contract is due in by the end of December, so the time pairs up quite well.
Great. I think the other thing in terms of time frame is, roughly speaking, from the time that we issue the RFP, we would hope to have occupancy in the 95 Lawrence project occurring in the 3-year-ish time frame. Obviously, a lot of variables there, but can we get the wastewater done in the same time frame in order to meet that schedule?
Absolutely, I think that's reasonable.
Okay, then I think that if we can do those two things and it doesn't hinder the issuing of the RFP, and if it doesn't put an unreasonable burden on the developer in terms of wastewater, I think, speaking for myself, that it's a win-win for everybody. Thank you.
So What kind of money are we talking about as far as what the total cost of this project is going to be? Do we have a rough estimate? Gary? You're muted again.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Exclusive of any costs associated with the wastewater treatment, the estimate for the cost of the project is approximately $21 million.
I'm asking specifically about the wastewater.
Oh,
cost.
you'd have to check with.
I believe the Boulder report had an estimate of around $4 million for the largest system, including the collection system.
Okay, $4 million. And then,
I think it was slightly more than that, maybe 4.2, 4.4.
Okay.
In that range.
call it 4.4. And that is on top of what the developer would pay, or all included everything, and the developer's going to have to put some money into what would basically be the cost without the expansion. Am I reading that correct? Is the developer paying anything?
Well, if I may, one thought of that is Bowler also did give a cost estimate for just doing the housing part, the 9,900 gallons per day.
Okay.
I don't recall what that number is, but it seems to me it'd be possible to have the developer commit to that amount, and then anything above that might be the responsibility of the town for the expansion.
Okay.
Something along those lines.
Helen?
Yeah, just to remind everybody, so whenever you hear about how much this wastewater, our first cluster, as Kathleen said, our first cluster system, whatever cost is mentioned, let's not forget that doing a large, much wider wastewater collection system with the treatment over by the dump on that big lot would be way more expensive and have way more pipes, and into the future, way more expensive. So when I look at 4-point-something million, I think, well, that's a chunk of change, but it'll get us credits that we really need so we can avoid spending that huge amount of money doing something which I frankly don't think would be as good an idea in terms of treating wastewater. Anyway, thank you.
And I'll just add to that quickly, is that just because the price tag's 4.4 million, that, or whatever it may be to the town, whatever that is after what's put forward in the RFP, whatever the town's cost is, would not necessarily be fully borne by the town if we can get some grant money. So, Gary, go ahead. You're muted again. 1 second, Gary.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. We did discuss at the wastewater meeting that this would be a wastewater treatment system that would be built by and operated by the town, but that the developer, as would be the case in any town in which they had wastewater treatment, would have to pay for the connection for the project to that town, plus whatever ongoing costs of supporting 45 plus units would be. So there would certainly be a contribution on the part of the developer, both in terms of the construction costs as well as the ongoing costs. The other thing I would comment on is when you talk about $4 or $5 million for the cost, that's the cost for the total system. But this is an iterative process, if I understand it correctly. So we could theoretically do 95 Lawrence first, then do the additional municipal, and then do the residential.
Right.
So the cost would not be all upfront.
Yep. Yep. Okay. I mean, that all sounds good, feasible, and I don't see any problems with it from here, from this side of the screen. So Scott, I don't see anybody's hands up. Would you mind running through that presentation you have? And I think
Sure. I can keep it brief. It looks like maybe I can do this. Let's see. Okay, here we go.
I kind of figured this would be a half hour at least. So we're kind
Okay, well, my apologies for not doing this initially.
That's okay.
Can you stay here?
Yep.
Are you able to see that?
Yep.
Okay, great. So let me just quickly run through this. And again, most of you have seen parts of this, so I'll go quickly here. This is just a quick picture of the overall study area according to the Mass Estuaries Project report, and it shows all the so-called sub-watersheds. And I'll focus a little bit on the Duck Creek, which we've been talking about tonight, which has been the most challenging. I'm not going to go through this in detail because of the time, but I just want to show you. Ryan had a question earlier, and this is kind of the overall calculation, if you will, as to how we meet the targets. I'll just point, if you can see my pointer here, up at the top is the existing loads of nitrogen. These are in kilograms per year for each one of the sub-watersheds. And the totals are over here. The so-called threshold is the level, according to MEP, that we need to meet, the town needs to meet. And then this row here represents the reduction in kilograms per year. And then you can see the percentages. So you can see Duck Creek, 76% reduction of existing and future build-out nitrogen. And then the Cove is the other one that's pretty high as well. Overall, the town target is around 50%. So it's pretty onerous. Now down here, just very quickly, I just want to highlight the components. One thing we've been talking about is a health regulation with the Board of Health, which would affect and impact and reduce all future growth in the town, which is going to be an important part of this because we know the so-called build out is significant. And in other words, if nothing does happen, things are going to get a lot worse before they get better. So it's important, I think, for the town to take some steps to start heading off future. And that's what this health regulation up front here is designed to do. We've also got a section on addressing, also with the health regulation, existing systems and converting them over time from standard Title V's to these so-called enhanced INAs. And again, I'll show you a picture of that in a minute. Ryan mentioned stormwater. We're working with the state right now on the Route 6 project to try to get them to integrate some nitrogen reduction features into that. And we brought that up at the DEP meeting, and I think we'll get some support from DEP working with their sister state agency, DOT, to try to make that happen. We're able to get some fertilizer reduction credits as part of the 208 plan, and we'll get into more detail on that later. Here's the aquaculture shellfish line item, and you can see we've got some numbers in various watersheds here in terms of potential reductions. I've been working with the Mayo Creek Restoration Group, and we've been able to calculate at least a placeholder number of what that project might get the town in terms of reduction there. We've got a so-called permeable reactive barrier project along Commercial Street, a pilot project, and this is in the Duck Creek watershed, and that would get us some reduction shown here. Something called the fertigation well out at the golf course, and then of course the 95 Lawrence project at the end here. And we're showing a 765 kilogram per year reduction from that project alone. Now that's with the larger expansion. So that's just a really quick overview of how, not without getting into the details of all the numbers, the plan to get this would get formulated into a watershed permit. Essentially, it would become a sort of contract between the town and DEP, and these would be the things that would go into the plan. Now, this is going to get broken out, as I said earlier, over a 25 to 30 year period in 5-year increments. So the next thing I'm working on right now is taking this table and breaking it into 5-year increments over time. And the idea would be each 5 years, the town would check in with DEP, look at progress, et cetera, as to how close we're getting to the targets, and make adjustments as we go, which is what we call adaptive management. Let me keep going without getting into these numbers, because like I say, there's a lot of detail here. This is a close-up of the Duck Creek, which is right here, and the Cove area. And I should mention this base map is from the Cape Cod Commission. They have a tool called the Watershed MVP. Each one of these little dots represents a septic system. Theoretically, the size of the dot represents the flow. So a larger dot is a larger flow. I say theoretically because where the town of Wellfleet has limited public water supply data, we don't have a lot of verification on private wells, which is how these wastewater flows are estimated. So I wouldn't pay too much attention to the size of the circles, but certainly they represent a pretty good aerial distribution. And what this graphic shows is for these two watersheds, which again are the most challenged ones to try to meet, are Duck Creek and the Cove. What I'm doing is calling out and highlighting 4 of those projects. Here's the 95 Lawrence area, which I'll show another slide of in a minute. Here is the permeable reactive barrier going down Commercial Street. That would be an ultimate build out of it. We're looking at a pilot project at the corner of Bank Street and Commercial as a starter. And then, of course, here's the Mayo Creek watershed. And then the INA, these are innovative and alternative septic upgrades, really would be everywhere. I just kind of noted it down here as sort of a placeholder. Here's a picture from the Boulder report. If you haven't seen it, this shows the 9,900 gallons per day as part of the housing project. And then the 3 municipal systems, fire, police, and elementary school down here in terms of flows. You can see that they kind of add up to be, similar in terms of the municipal compared to the housing project. And here is also from the Boulder report, here's a conceptual plan for what they called Alternative 2, which is simply connecting the municipal properties to the housing project. And the blue line, the red and the black line would represent some sewer collection lines to get there. And then here's Alternative 3, which is the project that we're talking about, which is the same thing, but it also includes these collection systems coming down Old Long Pond Road, as well as Gross Hill Road, as well as over here in Long Pond Road. Again, this is conceptual at this point. The details certainly can change going forward, but that's the plan that Boulder laid out in terms of the larger option 3. And here's a quick calculation of the benefits, which is what I've been focusing on. And you can see with scenario 1, this would be the INA alone. The net result is over here on the right. It would really end up being a net increase of about 68 kilograms per year into Duck Creek. And you can see for scenario 2 and 3, the numbers go down to minus 350. And then in scenario 3, the larger project would get us almost 800 kilograms per year, which is pretty substantial. So I think it's really great that the town's willing to get behind that, because I think it'll really be a nice project to put forward to DEP as part of this watershed permit in, again, one of the most challenged watersheds. The other project I mentioned is a permeable reactive barrier. This is a simple cross section showing essentially how this works. You sort of dig a trench. You're either using wood chips or some other carbon source like a vegetable oil to intercept the groundwater. I'm working with one of the scientists at EPA who's really focuses and specializes on these permeable reactive barriers, and he's going to be helping me put together at least a very early conceptual design for a pilot project. As I mentioned, I think one of the places we're targeting is the corner of Bank Street and Commercial to look at that. And then here's a quick picture of one of the enhanced INA systems. This is the nitro system, which at this point, frankly, looks like the most favorable. And most simply put, here's your normal septic tank and here's your normal leach field as part of Title V. And what nitro does is it puts a intermediate tank, which is actually 2 components. The first one being an aeration chamber that also has limestone in it to help stabilize the pH. And then the wood chip reactor chamber to basically process the wastewater as it flows from the septic tank to the leach field. 2 really nice things about this well, 3 nice things. First of all, the performance data is the best that's out there. This has been installed at the Mass Septic Test Center at the military base, George Hoyfelder's operation. And this technology is probably doing as well as any, including his own design, the so-called layer cake technology. Another advantage is because this wood chip is in a tank, it's easily changed out. The developer of this technology estimates that the wood chips might need to be replaced every 10 to 20 years. And that's a pretty easy operation. Much like pumping out your septic tank at period, you're basically replacing those wood chips. And those kind of costs have gone into the life cycle analysis of the system. The third advantage is this does have a blower for aeration, but if in fact there's a power outage, the system will still work without any really major detriments. You might, if the power is out for weeks or months, which is unlikely, it would still work as a Title V system. You might get some decreased treatment, but it is pretty resilient in that manner, which is something we've been looking at and trying to promote or look at certain technologies. I might add, for those interested, John Smith, the developer of this technology, is going to be presenting to the Board of Health tomorrow. So that meeting, I believe, will be aired on Zoom as well. If anybody's interested in listening in, he'll be giving a more detailed presentation on that technology. And this is just the area of the Commercial Street PRB, which I already mentioned. That's part of the plan. There's the location we're thinking about for a pilot project. We're just really at the beginning of putting together some conceptual design. And the first step here will be putting in some wells to detail the flow characteristics as well as vertical analysis of nitrogen at different levels. And I think I'll stop there. I just show this article because somebody down in Long Island just put in a really good PRB in a very similar situation, which is tidal, and they're getting very, very good results. So we're going to be working with them down in Long Island in terms of a conceptual design, and really that's why I put that slide in there. But I'll stop there, Mr. Chairman. As I said, I just wanted to give you a quick overview, and happy to answer any questions.
Sure. There's a couple things that I'd like to I'm highly skeptical of the nitrogen reduction numbers for oysters if they're not based on pre-existing production. And I just kind of implore the wastewater committee to work with some people who are actually in the field, some shellfishermen, not just a constable, about the potential and the sort of type of project that is being planned in that scenario, because there's no better wealth of information than the people who are out there every day dealing with what goes on out there and the sort of natural life cycles of things that are put on the bottom these days with the amount of disease and mortality and ice and all sorts of events that we have that make it very difficult to have a stable population of sort of even wild stock, which is propagated every year by the town, is totally unstable. It's not it's a roll of the dice every year. So when you're talking about these numbers for nitrogen reduction, the idea that you can just sort of magically have a reef that lives and produces for you in nitrogen reduction year after year is, to me, a pipe dream. I mean, I have a reef on the ground that I propagate every year, and every year about 90% of it dies unless we don't have ice, and it's all just a project. But I do implore them to get some hands-on experience rather than just theory in this, because there's a reason why other towns are using aquaculture, because it's hard to keep oysters alive even when you take care of them. So that's the only thing I'll say right there.
Point well taken. And as I've mentioned to Nancy and others on the wastewater committee, I'm in no position to suggest or recommend any increase in any location. Whatever information goes into this plan will have to come from the town. And as I said, we're really just at the beginning of that process. But I certainly defer to you, Mr. Chairman, and others in town as to how we might get the right group of people. We have had a number of discussions from commercial shellfish people at various meetings in the past that I participated in. I've heard the varying views on this, so I'm sensitive to it and respectful. And certainly I'm going to defer to the town as to what goes into the plan, if anything, on the shellfish aquaculture. As you know, many other towns on the Cape have done this. They've put some expansion over a long-term planning period on the order of 25, 30 years and want to get credit from it from DEP. So that'll be completely up to the town of Wellfleet whether or not the town wants to put something in the plan or not. So I'll be listening carefully, and I totally am respectful of your idea here of getting the practitioners involved in this and listening to them. So thank you.
Yeah, I think every other town has used an aquaculture system where it's been contracted. So that costs money too, to have people taking care of stuff. So
Yes.
it's not free by any means. So, Justina's got her hand up, and then Hillary.
Yeah, I was going to echo Mike's comments. Scott, I got the feeling that that was not your area of contribution to the plan. And unfortunately, Kurt Felix isn't here tonight. But I think Kurt and maybe some other members of the wastewater committee might be invited either to have a special oyster meeting with some members of the shellfish community, or else come before the selectmen. Because I think this is a important point to clear up. I think there's credible information coming from the shellfish community that they're like, how are you going to do those numbers? And so I think it's an important to look at it now before we have living product that we're because once you've got a whole bunch of oyster to take care of, it's a different story. So I guess I know Kurt, I'll give him a call and I'll suggest that. Mike, is that okay?
Sure.
Okay.
Hillary.
Sure. I was just going to add that I think the wastewater committee as a whole has heard the comments from members of the shellfishing community. And I think we acknowledge at this point that oysters are not our one and only solution. So oysters go into sort of our multiple choice plan. And then we come together as a community and choose the best options. And DEP has acknowledged too that oysters present some problems, and we haven't yet figured out how to insert them properly into our plan because of all of the dynamics that go into raising them, growing them, keeping them alive, and harvesting them and permitting their locations. So it's one option among many, and we've heard from the community loud and clear their thoughts on it. So I just want to make that known.
Okay. Ryan?
Yeah, I'm going out of order with how things have shaken out tonight. But I would like to make a motion to support the scenario 3 for the wastewater plan for the 95 Lawrence Road project.
Okay. So moved, I guess. Do you have to make the motion?
Or I move to support scenario 3 of the wastewater plan for the 95 Lawrence Road housing project.
A second?
Second, Helen.
Janet, you have your hand up. Janet's muted.
I was going to ask, are we there yet? Do we really need a motion at this date? Is there a rush? I mean, I think we're all in support of it, but I'm not sure that we need a motion.
We probably don't need a motion, but I don't think there's a problem in moving to support it. If the board wants to take a vote in support, it's not a motion to.
Go ahead. Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, we don't need to make a motion, but a motion's been made. The motion's in support of this, but it doesn't mean we've approved it. So I'm okay with it.
Okay. Can the motion be reread, please?
I move to support a scenario 3 wastewater plan for the 95 Lawrence Road housing project.
And I seconded it already.
Okay. All in favor? Roll call vote.
Helen, I.
Janet, I.
Christina, aye.
Ryan, aye.
Michael, aye. The motion carries 5-0 in support of the plan.
Thank you.
Okay.
I think that will help that project move along a little faster.
Well, everyone knows that we support it now. So there's that. Okay. Next on the agenda. Thank you, Scott and Gary and the Housing Authority and 95 Lawrence Task Force. Appreciate all the work that's gone into this and the communication that's happening with those two people. And we look forward to hearing more from wastewater as this goes on, Okay. So next we have Marina Advisory Committee. Sam Pieper. Is it Pieper or Pepper?
Hi,
Pieper.
well, it's Pepper.
Pepper? Okay.
Yes. Let me put my video on there. How are you this evening?
Good. How are you?
Good. Yes. So I submitted an application to the town for, first of all, maybe by way of background, I'm a part-time resident of Wellfleet. My primary home is on the South Shore, but I spend more than 50% there on Old Kings Highway. And I have a significant amount of experience in working with the towns. I used to live in Wayland, Mass, and I was on the FinCom there for 10 years, including 2 years as chairman. So I've kind of been through the battles. And also I'm a lifelong boater, mostly sailor, but I also have a 24-foot center console powerboat. So I'm very interested in the marina, and obviously there's a huge amount of activity there going on right now. So I thought I did speak with Dan Silverman, the town moderator, and he suggested I get involved in the town through this process through the Marine Advisory Committee.
Okay, Janet. You muted again. The board can leave themselves unmuted.
It's a habit to just mute myself.
Yeah.
Okay. Thank you, Sam, for your application. Sounds really good. I just have to say that I believe every person on a committee has to be a full-time resident. And if the other board members want to comment on that, but that is a Mass General law.
Helen?
Janet, it's interesting. I've never seen that law, and my understanding was that Wellfleet, unlike other communities, although some communities also allow this, our criteria for having people on boards and committees and so forth is that they're willing to do the work and inform themselves and abide by the various laws and regulations and show up. Can we, if there's something I don't know, and that's a possibility, can we please see that section of Mass General Law? Because all throughout the years, I have never heard about it being Mass General Law. I'm not doubting you, but I've never seen it. And it was really talked about back in the early 2000s, which was the first time I dragged my brain through this. So, could we wait on that and make sure that this actually is required? Because we've never done that before.
I thought we always did it.
No, we have a lot of committee members who are part-time residents because they either go to the south for the winter or they have a home outside of Boston. I mean, many people who you've appointed who are prominent in town have been serving, on their committees while they have homes somewhere else.
Yeah, no, I understand that, but I also think that the people who go south for the winter are registered to vote here. They don't just have a house here and come back and forth. I don't know. I thought maybe it's that there's different boards. Maybe they're appointed boards where you have to be a resident, but this is appointed. So
I think elected possibly, but I don't think that's correct either. I mean, at least for, select board, you'd have to be registered in that town, but I don't think appointed committees like this, we've ever had an issue with somebody, who was a part-time resident or owned a second home here, but maybe wasn't registered to vote because we've always accepted them wanting to serve.
I want to say, Courtney, you haven't been here that long. There is, to my knowledge, from my 8 years on the Water Commission, there was definitely a precedent of you had to be a resident. And indeed, when people couldn't make meetings, it was disruptive because there was work to do.
I just think that if we assess this now, we really need to go through our full roster of members and actually make sure everybody's a registered voter. This could cause, that's all I'm saying is that I know that we have people who serve on this town, on town boards and committees who may not be registered to vote here. And Mr. Pepper hasn't had a chance to say whether he's registered to vote here or not. He's just said that he has a second home.
I understand what you're saying.
Excuse me, Mike, may I speak?
You may.
This has been, I'm repeating myself, but nobody seems to hear me. This has never been the case. The requirements are fairly strict. You have to show up, but I have served with some of the most useful, hardworking, researching, diligent, show up at every meeting appointees who were not registered voters, but were completely devoted to the town. We got huge amounts of work out of them. And, you know, some of them retire here eventually, but they are a resource and shouldn't be discriminated against. If they can show up, do the work, if they miss 4 meetings in a row, they're out. But that's the only requirement. And I really am not sure why we're talking about this again, unless, Janet, you're actually aware of a section of Mass General Law about it. But I didn't hear about it, and I think we even had opinions from council in the early 2000s. It was looked at, and the select board then said, God, why would we waste this huge resource? So,
Okay, so we'll move on because I don't know, maybe it isn't an elected board,
Yes.
something
Yes.
like that. And if I recall, we just had Lance Miller, who's up for an application tonight, which jogged my memory. I'm going to look this up on my phone.
Okay, I remember what that was, Janet. He did not even own a property in Wellfleet at the time,
Right.
and that's why we postponed that. He wasn't a second homeowner. He wasn't a part-time resident. He was moving here. So I think he's moved here now, and that's why this has come back up. I think he's actually a full-time resident at this point. So the only issue I have about this, I mean, I think there probably are some committees where you should have to be a resident to be on them, like the Zoning Board of Appeals or, you know, the Planning Board or the regulatory committees. But advisory committees and stuff like that, I think that's less of an issue. So either way, it could be a policy of the select board or not. But right now, I think it is not the policy of the select board, and that part-time residents can serve on these so long as they meet the guidelines. But I would be interested in looking into limiting some of these committees that we have and boards that we have to being resident only. Ryan, you got your hand up?
You know, if there is something in Massachusetts general law, then obviously we'll have to reevaluate a lot of things. If we set a precedent tonight and just say that nobody that's not a full-time resident can be on our committees, we will have to recruit and appoint new members of multiple committees. And some committees may have problems reaching quorums for meetings after that. I know that we're all aware of how hard it is to fill some of these positions. And as long as somebody is dedicated to putting in the work, I don't have any issue with them, doing that work. But if there's if there's 2 positions open on a commit or 1 position open on a committee and there's 2 applicants and one's a part-time resident and one's a full-time resident, I will usually side with the full-time resident. But I don't think we should discard the part-time residents because they do contribute a lot to our town's governance. Thank you.
Yeah, I agree. I just wonder. So, Mr. Pepper, maybe you are a resident? We could start with that because I was
A resident in respect to, I spend more than half the time. I'm retired, so I'm spending, I would guess 60, 70%, but I am not full-time resident, just to be full disclosure.
Okay.
Well, are you registered to vote in Wellfleet? Not that it matters, but
I am not right now, but that's something I talked to the moderator about, that I would move in that direction. I cannot right now because we're within the window of the election, but
here's what I'd like to do is I would like to just move on this condition on it being acceptable under Mass General Law, which I think it is. We can look into that, but so long as it's legal, then, I mean, maybe we don't even have to do that. I mean, we've done this before, but I would like to just make a motion somehow.
Well, I'd also like to, we usually ask the applicant to say something about why they want to be on this, which you already did.
Yeah.
If anybody from, does the Marine Advisory Board need somebody? And is there anybody who would like to speak for Mr. Pepper? I mean, just.
Yep. Joe Aberdale is on. So if you could just unmute yourself and then.
Go ahead, Joe.
Good evening.
Yep.
The Marine Advisory Committee does have openings. In the past, it has not been unusual for the committee to have a member who is not a full-time resident, but spends most of his time here and is a long-time voter. I do not know the applicant. I defer to the board on that. But he is a longtime voter and is familiar with the harbor and the marina. So it would appear that he would qualify to be on the committee. But I defer to the board on that.
Okay, no, that sounds good. Well, hearing that, I'll make a motion unless somebody else has something to add.
No.
I move that we appoint Sam Pepper to the Marine Advisory Committee. I'm looking, and it's a regular term, 3-year term.
If I could.
For a term ending June 30th, 2021.
Oh, so, okay.
If I could please add, am I on?
Yes.
Yep, you're on, Joe.
I would recommend it be to an alternate position that is open.
Do
Can we
you
do
have,
that?
through you to Mike, do you have alternates?
Yes.
Yes. There are two.
On the Marine Advisory
There are
Committee?
2 alternate positions. Yes.
Okay. Janet, do you want to do that over again?
Okay, I move to approve Sam Pepper to the position of an alternate position on the Marine Advisory Board for a term ending, what is it, June 21?
June 30th, 2021.
2021.
Okay. Is there a
What
second?
is can I ask a question? What's the difference between, is it just the voting? Is it the right to vote? Is that it? Between alternate
Yep.
and regular member?
It is
Yeah.
the right to vote. Yep.
Okay.
You can fully participate. And then, I think if it's working with the committee, then they would probably, you could ask to become a regular member at some point down the line. Joe.
Yeah, well, June 21 is only 8 or 9 months away, so it's a
Right.
short
Yep.
period. Yep.
So it would automatically be reappointed. You'd get a notification that you'd be up for reappointment come June 2021, and we would
As an
discuss your-
alternate, but you could
Yes.
ask to be moved into
A regular.
a regular at that point. Helen,
Okay.
Yeah.
Helen, your hands in your face. Joe, go ahead.
Yes. The alternate person filling an alternate position can vote if enough of the regular members are not there to have a quorum. In that case, then the alternate would step in and would vote.
Okay.
But all the time, the alternate would be able to fully participate in any discussion and deliberation.
Fair enough.
Okay. So I'm comfortable with that. Sam, you comfortable with that?
Yeah, no, that sounds fine. And I'll probably definitely be looking, to re-up in June next year. So,
Okay. And at that point, if there's an opening on the committee for a full member, you'd be able to apply for that and
right.
have the experience with the committee.
Yep. That
Okay.
sounds perfect. Thank you.
So I second the motion that Janet made.
Yep. All in favor? Aye.
Helen, I.
Justina, aye.
Ryan, I.
Michael, aye. Motion carries 5-0. Welcome to the
All right.
Marine Advisory.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you, board.
Okay, now Lance Miller. We've been through this with Lance Miller one time. Is he on here?
Yes.
Yes.
Hi, Lance.
Hey,
Hey. So, do you want to just remind us why you want to be on Bike and Walkways?
well, first of all, come Thursday, we'll have been here for 3 weeks. This is our only home, and it's our permanent home. We're very glad to be here. When I was looking at the property in Southwest Wellfleet on First Avenue, I noticed that there didn't seem to be any way you could get from South Wellfleet to center of town without going on Route 6. So I put a note into the board or to the town and asked, was I missing something? And Courtney suggested that I talk to someone on the Bike and Walkways. And that was Rebecca Noble. When we talked, she said, yeah, that's an issue, but there's another more pressing issue, which is the extension through Wellfleet of the bike path. And I thought, well, gee, I'm an ex-rider. I used to, not many centuries, but I did a lot of 100 miles, and I'm really in favor of that. If there's something I could do, I'd be glad to try. So I'm in favor of using your legs to get around. So walking and biking are good.
Okay. Well, that's good enough for me. I don't know about the rest of the board. Helen?
Yeah, so hi, Mr. Hi. I didn't want to vote last time because we didn't see your face. You were away. But I was perfectly happy if you wanted to serve. And I just hope that you are also able to pitch in with the kind of help that committees need, like somebody to take the minutes, somebody to help the chair post meetings. And none of that is very time consuming or difficult, but our wonderful smaller committees, and this is a wonderful advisory committee, I've been to their meetings, needs that kind of participation, that kind of service. It isn't just showing up and doing the research with other people. It's actually hands-on, having the committee work well. So thank you very much for being willing to serve, and I hope you can pitch in. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay, Ryan?
I would just, from recalling of last meeting, Lance also had the support of the members of the Bike and Walkways Committee at that time. I imagine that still applies as well. So thank you.
Okay, can I have a motion?
I move to appoint Lance Miller to the Bike and Walkways Committee for a term ending June 30th, 2020.
Second.
Helen, second.
All in favor?
All in favor?
Helen, I.
Janet, aye.
Justina, aye.
Ryan, I.
Michael, aye. Motion carries 5-0. Welcome to the Bike and Walkways Committee. Thank you, Lance.
Thanks very much. Glad to be here.
Okay, on to the appointment of Robert Schriefter to the Library Board of Trustees. So this is a vacancy that was recently opened up, I think.
Yes.
There was John Morrissey that was in there.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. Thank John Morrissey for all the time he spent and service he did for the library. So, okay, Robert Schiefer.
Yes.
There? Hi.
Hello.
Hey, Robert. How are you?
Good. How are you?
You got anything to say about why you want to do this?
Well, I've for years have worked on the art committee at the library. Done art workshops for adults and children for years. I was on the board, I think 4 or 5 years ago, and had to leave because of job issues. But now I'm back. I'm not leaving. I'm a resident of Wellfleet, lived here for years and years, and I would want nothing more than to continue serving the library, which is the heart of the town for me.
Okay. Can we have a motion?
I move to appoint Robert Schriefter to the Library Board of Trustees to fill a term until an election can be held.
Second.
All in favor?
Helen, I.
Janet, I.
Justina, aye.
Brian, aye.
Michael, aye. Motion carries 5-0. Thank you, Robert.
Thank you all.
Thank you, Robert.
Thank you.
All right.
Okay, moving along. Approval of Community Preservation Act grant agreement.
Okay.
So
You guys, go
these
ahead.
were just the two that were approved at town meeting. So they're just the contracts for that stuff.
Yep. Okay, can we have a motion?
Hold on a minute before we do the motion.
Okay.
Courtney, do we all have to sign these, or can we say the chair can sign them?
I believe that would be fine, but I'd have to check with Mary Rogers.
Okay, let's just go for the 3 signatures,
Okay.
or all of us there, so that we don't have to hold this up.
Yeah, let's not hold it up. Okay, motion?
I move to approve the Community Preservation Act grant agreement with the Wellfleet Historical Society and Museum and authorize the board to sign it.
Helen, second.
All in favor?
Helen, I.
Janet, I.
Justina, aye.
Brian, aye.
Michael, aye. Motion carries 5-0. Okay, now we are on COVID update.
Nope, there's one more.
Agreement for the Lower Cape Community
Oh,
Development.
you're right. The Community Preservation Act grant. Approval of Community Preservation Act grant, Lower Cape Community Development Partnership, so the CDP.
Well, this too is approved at, did you make a motion, Michael? No.
I did not make a motion.
Oh.
So this was also approved at town meeting.
Town meeting. So I move to approve the Community Preservation Act grant agreement with the Lower Cape Community Development Partnership and authorize the board to sign it.
Second, Justina.
Second.
Okay, all in favor?
Helen, I.
Janet, I.
Justina, aye.
Brian, aye.
Michael, aye. Motion carries 5-0. Okay. Now we're on to COVID-19 updates and recommendations. Update on staff return to work plan. So, Maria, are you here?
Somewhere.
Hi, everybody.
Hi.
Hi.
So the only one I'm really sort of ready to go over with is town hall. And I'd want to emphasize that not looking at any changes to how open that building is to the public. So my thanks to Hillary and Janet from the Board of Health for sort of walking through and looking at the spaces there. And I think we can safely and comfortably get to the point of bringing folks who haven't been working in the building back into the building with some minor changes relatively. There's a couple of spaces where people need to be moved further away from each other a tad. There's an opportunity where I've got 2 people in one office to put in two instances where there are other spaces for the second person to be using. And then there was a couple of shared office machines that could either be moved or, a second printer be added at, minimal costs in order to get everybody sort of back to work. So following the recommendations from the Board of Health and from Hillary, looking to implement those, as soon as the rearranging can be done, with the help of DPW and the IT staff. But certainly no interest in bringing the general community back into the building. We're still operating by appointment only, and I haven't received a lot of feedback about that, but it does seem to be working well. The other couple buildings that they were looking at, I have not gotten too deeply into what their recommendations are, so I'm not really ready to go over those. But for Town Hall, I think we have opportunities to be able to safely and comfortably get everybody back to work.
So, Helen, go ahead.
Yeah, Maria, thank you so much for working with staff about this. You've come into the middle of this crazy situation, and it's all unfolding, before us weekly. It's not even settled and won't be for a long time. I just want to know, I was called and asked if it would be okay with me, for one, if the Select Board office was taken over as a space for someone. And are you still thinking of doing that through you, Mike, to Maria?
Only for as long as this whole COVID thing goes on, which doesn't seem to have an end in sight right now, but we would certainly put your correspondence office in a place that would be secured to you, that you would have access to. We'll look at the options there, make sure that you have the same unrestricted access to your correspondence that you have now.
Yeah, the only issue is with confidential documents, and the fact that I at least can't always go in during office hours, and half the time nobody's there now. So I guess what we have to figure out is some way for us to pick up our packets, or
absolutely.
Well, in other words, I would be going into the office. I would maintain my key. I, for one, obviously I'm talking about all of us, but I'm just saying I, for one, would train my key, and that person who was in that office would also be working in there at times.
No, we're looking to move your correspondence somewhere else.
Well, the issue is if it's confidential, which doesn't come up a lot, but, for example, there was some paperwork today that I went in and read, and, whatever, it wouldn't have necessarily been something, it was labeled confidential. So whatever, you work it out.
Yeah, we promise to work it out. I mean,
we can have a lock
as much as it's in a locked box, that only you guys and, limited staff have access to, but we would certainly maintain your free access that you have now, and any issues related to confidentiality, we would absolutely want to secure those.
Janet?
So I have no.
I was just.
Oh, sorry, Helen. I thought you were done.
I am.
Okay. Janet.
So I have no problem with it. And my suggestion was that we put it in our papers in the office where Jeannie Mac and Courtney are. And there's usually, or has been, a desk or some shelves there. And it looks like we could, put our Select Board packets out in the open, because they're out in the open anyhow, but anything important can be put in a desk drawer. And I know when Courtney and Jean aren't in the office, then the door's locked. And I think that area would be fine if it's fine with Courtney and Jean.
It'd probably be just that simple.
It'd be what?
It'd probably be just that easy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I think that would be fine. Fine with me anyhow.
Ryan?
So getting off the topic of the office, one group of people I am concerned about, I don't know if any town staff falls into that group, and those are the ones with compromised immune systems. I would prefer anybody that has a legitimate medical concern about continuing to work from home to be supported by the town. Dealing with a compromised immune system is not easy for them as it is, and to have them put in a situation where they're uncomfortable and stressed will make it even harder for them to work effectively. Thank you.
Okay. Justina?
Yeah, I support what Ryan said about risk factors like compromised immune systems or any other significant risk factor. And then secondly, what is the mask policy in town hall?
We follow the state guidelines. If people cannot be 6 feet apart, that's when the masks are required. But in general, people don't have to put masks on working in their own spaces if they can stay far enough away from each other.
Because one of the things I've been thinking about, one of the reasons Wellfleet did so well from a business perspective this year was we were seen during COVID as a safe haven. And before you came, we deliberated about putting restrictions on short-term rentals. I'm sure you're familiar with Maine, put some restrictions on travel into the state and so forth. All of us with the tourist economy struggled what to do. But we were seen as Wellfleet as being a safe haven. We have low COVID numbers. And for want of a better word, that's part of our brand. So I think I would really urge us to think about going a little bit above and beyond the state guidelines. Doesn't hurt. Our people on the streets tend to wear masks. We're really we're COVID compliant community, and it's helped us make money. Our restaurants have had good numbers. Our rentals were through the roof. Our real estate market is having a heyday. And, there's a lot of good reasons to act in accordance with Wellfleet's brand. So that's my little business speech of the day. And I think we should mask up in town hall and go the extra mile. And, when citizens start coming back, they're going to want to see that, because that's who we are. That's Wellfleet now.
So I have I'm just curious, is there a physical plan that was drafted, Maria?
Yeah, it's internal. It wasn't something that we were, it's an operational issue, so it wasn't necessarily something that we were putting on the agenda for a vote. But right. Yes, we have put together a plan. Actually, Hillary and Janet did all the heavy lifting on that.
Okay. It's not finalized, or it's just going.
The one for town hall is, I'd say we're ready to go through with it. I haven't had a chance to look in depth for the ones for the analysis of the Public Works Department and.
Okay.
Yeah. Mike?
I'm in the middle of talking, Helen. Okay. So I have a couple concerns, and one is the HVAC system. Is that bringing air in from outside, or is it just an internal system that transports air around town hall that moves air basically. Is it a closed system, or is it bringing in fresh air from outside?
Well, I mean, operationally, they all bring in air from the outside. That's just how they work. People have had some discussions over the years about, circulation in the building. And certainly there are easy options from, having the nurse from the Board of Health look at it and, just opening a window at the end of the hallway once in a while easily brings air in from the outside.
Yeah. So I just was concerned because I know that building's had some ventilation issues as far as how well ventilated it is. So I was just wondering sort of what the window situation is. And, my real concern is that, whether staff's all feeling comfortable, if there's a sort of optional masking guidelines, does that sort of comport with people who enter someone else's office? Do they have to put a mask on at that point, or?
And that's definitely a comfort level thing for folks too. If they, whoever did the Dutch doors in those buildings did a really great job. So, there aren't any offices where people actually have to enter the office if the occupant would prefer that they didn't.
Right. Okay. Yeah, I'm just concerned about people having to enter offices or having to interact with other staff who don't want to wear a mask and feel uncomfortable because of whatever their instance is. And I with what's everything that's happened at the White House lately, I don't want to. I'm apprehensive about the potential of coming into the winter season. Some people have kids in school, more exposure, less exposure. I know our numbers are low right now, but it concerns me a little bit about, sort of any kind of shared spaces and any kind of public areas in town hall where people are interacting with each other. If someone feels like they don't want to wear a mask, that's fine, but it may make someone else on staff quite uncomfortable. Not knowing, not everybody's in the same bubble or has the same circumstances or knows, what the other staff members outside of work lifestyle is. So I'm just throwing it out, my 2 cents about masking and what we sort of require of businesses and stuff like that. And I mean, personally, I just think, if you're in your office and you're by yourself and you don't want to wear a mask, that's fine. But if you're in an office where other staff members are interacting, I don't know. My inclination would be that it should be some kind of policy that you do have to mask up during a meeting or something like that. I just, just seeing what unfolded in the White House lately, there's 30 people infected right now. And that's a place where everyone's tested every day or theoretically. So the potential for things to spread, especially when there's an HVAC system that's not, pulling in a lot of air or filtering or having any kind of UV sanitation, to move air from office to office. I think the science is in that indoor spaces are generally much more dangerous than outdoor spaces. So I just want staff to all feel comfortable and feel safe. And that's really my primary concern, and that they are safe as well. So I'd like to at some point see kind of what the plan is. And also I'm a little concerned at the requirement for staff to return to work before the plan was drafted. That just sort of concerns me. So just want to say that and go on to the next board member here. I think, Justina, you have your hand up?
Yes, number one, I thought staff wasn't going back till there was a plan, and I thought the plan was supposed to come from Hillary and the Board of Health. Did I have something wrong?
The plan did come from Hillary and the Board of Health.
And do we have it in writing in your report? Is that where we're from?
I don't think it wasn't included in the agenda, no.
Okay. Update on staff return to work plan, COVID updates. Okay, so we don't have a written plan yet.
So we do, but it was more of a internal operations thing, so it wasn't being put on the agenda for the board to vote on.
Okay, well, I think
Well, it's kind of the Board of Health's purview. If the Board of Health wants to take a vote on it, they can do that.
Oh, okay. So we don't have to do that.
I think the Board of Health meets soon. I don't know what they're doing, but that's kind of like their ballpark before ours.
Right. Okay. All right. So that's the process. All right. I will just say my vote of one is no employee should be scared of another employee not wearing a mask. That's not fair. That's basic manners. And if you're in an enclosed space, a room, a conference room, an office, there's no magic to 6 feet. That's based actually on a laboratory study from the 30s of breath. And they're coming out with so much information about why aerosol breath particles carry risk. So I think that I would like to see the plan carry the courtesy that a coworker will put on a mask in an enclosed space that's shared. It seems sort of logical. So I'm putting that out there as my suggestion.
I can read it.
I have Hillary on here. She's got her hand up. Go ahead, Hillary.
Hi there. So it is written in the plan. There is a section on face coverings, and it does state that a face covering must be worn inside buildings when you're in shared spaces such as restrooms, hallways, elevators, and stairwells. It does also call for the face covering when 6 feet of distance cannot be met. If you have an office door that is capable of closing, we would recommend you close your door and then you could take your mask off. But the guidance and the document that I did put together does call for face coverings. We acknowledge that it is very important to wear that, and it is one of the only tools we have to protect ourselves from COVID, as we've seen. So there's a number of studies promoting the use of face masks. I don't think we need to review them or go over them, but it is in the plan. Again, Janet and I did work together on this along with Doug Guili, my assistant, and it is not on the Board of Health agenda to review. I can certainly share it with them if you want them to review it. I was going to let them know that it's drafted and it's available if they want to see it.
Okay.
Terrific. Thank you.
Okay. I don't know. I lost track of who had their hand up first, so I'm going to go up to Helen because she's on top, and then Ryan.
Hi there. So to use the slogan that was created by our beach administrator early in the summer, mask when you move. Any reading of the science, and there's now been a lot of science, but it started coming out in March, of the aerosol life of this amazingly robust virus has, let me put it in a positive way. When I'm talking to someone, I want to be able to laugh and speak looking at them, and in some cases sing with them. And that requires more than 6 feet. And in enclosed spaces, I just simply wear a mask, which I hate. But in town hall or in the DPW building, or if two guys are driving around in a truck or a cruiser and the windows are closed, or if I'm walking around in a building through the corridor, I think I have to wear a mask. I liked what Hillary just provided from the Board of Health, from that set of deliberations about, if you've got an office to yourself, and it sounds like people at town hall are going to get to have offices to themselves. So that's really good. You know, you get to work with the door closed and somebody taps on it and everybody puts on their mask and then there's an exchange. And I'm also ruthlessly practical. I don't want staff to get sick. I really don't. We have, it's a small town and we employ quite a few people, but not that many for the work that needs to be done. The other thing that nobody's mentioned, and it applies to me, and I'm hopelessly open about these things, is I don't want to get up in other people's business about if they've got an immune system problem. I'm out there. I say I'm old. I'm 72. I've got a heart condition. Nothing dire. I take medication for it. I was coming off an antibiotic, which takes about a month and a half, 2 months before your immune system really gets back. And I have to be really careful. And it is a huge drag. But I don't want to have to be prying into other people's physical status, which is why I just always put a mask on unless I'm outdoors and standing 10, 12 feet apart, which I do an awful lot. I just don't want to get up in their business. I don't want to have to worry if I'm laughing or speaking, not in a whisper, if I'm sending stuff out into the air. And if it's dry, which is one of the reasons you get the flu more in winter or colds, is that the aerosol virus, the virus in aerosol form floats in the air longer in dry air in winter. And therefore, that is one of the reasons you're more apt to get these illnesses in winter, not just because the rooms are closed off. Okay, thank you.
Okay. Ryan?
Yes, I would really like to see the plan. Technically, we are special town employees. We're just discussing the use of our office within town hall, and where we might be relocated. We are subject to the reopening plans as much as any other member of the town staff while we're in town hall. We really have to keep it in mind that it's not just, for this board specifically, we are in and out of town hall on a regular basis. We're not always there during business hours, but sometimes we are. And we have to take that into mind as well. So we really do need a copy of the report or the plan to be sent to the entirety of the board. Thank you.
Okay, Janet?
I just want to say that Janet has been mentioned a number of times with working on this, and it is Janet Drone of the Board of Health, not me.
Thank you both.
Yeah. Okay. Helen, do you have your hand up again, or is that just by accident?
It's sluggish when I try to turn it off.
Okay, all right. So
I'm trying to turn it off again. It
so
won't
I
turn
think we
off.
can move on. We're not going to take.
Up. There it is.
We're not taking any action right now, so I think we can move off of this subject and on to business. Everyone okay with that?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. Approval of contract with the Mass Environmental Trust for the restoration of fish passage along the Upper Herring River. This is the one I think that John Portnoy was working on. I don't know if he's on here, but Hillary's on here.
I can speak to it.
Yep.
This is an application that was submitted by Friends of Herring River, the National Park Service, and the town of Wellfleet. And it is to the Mass Environmental Trust. And we did receive funding in the amount of $38,320 to design 2 stream crossings on the Upper Herring River. One is at the Old Kings Highway and one is at Schoolhouse Hill Road. So Lauren McKean, the planner from the National Park, and I are serving as project managers for this. And we need your permission to sign the grant because of the amount that we received. So it's a great project. It's complementary to the Herring River restoration, and we're all excited to get working on it.
Okay. Can I have a motion? Ryan, you got your hand up?
Yeah. I just have. I just have one question. I fully support this. I think it's a great project. My one question is, so the new culverts or the new structures will be bigger than what are there currently, which I assume would increase the water flow. Will the potential impacts of the increase in flow be taken into account in terms of the water levels seen in the ponds?
So we would take that into account as part of our design and engineering to site the right structure. So they will all be tidally controlled to the best of my understanding. So we could limit flow until such a time when we could receive higher flows.
Okay, and I assume it would also help with in instances when there's high volume flows as well. Is that correct?
Yeah, that is correct. So currently they're both in really bad condition. So any amount of improvement there is going to help with flowing in and outflow.
All right. Well, I think this is great work. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. And thank John Portnoy too.
Yes. Thank you, John Portnoy, if you're watching. So.
Okay. Motion.
I move to approve the contract with the Massachusetts Environmental Trust, the MET, for the restoration of the passage of fish along the Upper Herring River and to authorize the town administrator to sign it.
Second.
All in favor?
Helen, I.
Janet, I.
Yeah, aye.
Ryan, aye.
Michael, aye. Motion carries.
Mike,
Yep.
may I make an interesting point? Those two culverts really need to be improved, but that isn't the interesting point. During the time when you have the herring run and maybe just otherwise, often they're full of snapping turtles waiting to eat supper. It's kind of amazing, and you can hear them inside. It's a group. It's kind of scary. It's kind of amazing.
There's a big one.
Check it out.
In Herring Pond, a huge one.
Yeah.
Okay. Woodland Fire Management. Let's see, Ryan, you're here. I don't know if Chief Polly's on. But go ahead, Ryan. Is Chief Polly on? Yeah.
Yes. So this is kind of I mean this for a discussion to see if it's something that we should be looking into. We all know that this year we are currently considering an extreme drought for the area. But we've had, it seems like for the last number of years, we've had long periods of times where we're in drought conditions, especially during the summer months or the late summer. So one of the issues I think is, there is the potential of having a fire start in a harder to access location that might spread and become something significant. Right now, so our forests are relatively young. They were actually most of them actually burnt down in 1927. They were caught on fire by the train it was the embers from the train that caught all the woods on fire. And then the fire tower was built largely in response to that. And right now, I just look out there and I just see the accumulation of fuel year over year. The seashore does do some controlled burning. I'm just, and we've had a couple of fires start on the power lines this year. I think there were 3. 2 of them happened at the same time, which is dangerous. Luckily, the fire department was able to contain and control them. One of them got pretty close to a house. It was probably like 5 or 10 feet from a house. I just am wondering if we should be discussing on how to manage our woods in terms of, fire prevention. Thank you.
Mr. Chair?
Yes, Chief.
It's Rich Pauly here. Thank you. Mr. Curley is correct in that the latest information that I got this morning was that just over 33% of the Commonwealth is still in an extreme severe drought situation. And that is basically all of Barnstable County and all of the areas basically east of 495. And then it also stretches out a little bit to the west of the state. So it is a concern. Just a little bit of a background. When you look at wildland fires, brush fires, fires out west, statistics show that over 90% of them are caused by humans, accidentally, not intentionally, if you will, but as a result of carelessly discarded cigarettes, hot embers, ash. So the human act on this is certainly something that needs to be understood and recognized. I'm in constant conversations, regular conversations with Dave Crary, who is works for the Cape Cod National Seashore, the National Park Service, and he's the wildfire management officer. Dave is an expert in this. He's been doing it for well over 25, if not 30 plus years. So Dave and I talk on a regular basis. The challenge that we face is that, so much of the wooded area is under the control of the seashore. So the town does not have the ability, or we don't have the resources to do any real fire management. But the good news is that there's a program out called Firewise. It's put out by the National Fire Protection Association, and the National Park Service has subscribed to it. And it's a combination of public education, working with homeowners particularly, and making their homes more safe with buffers and barriers, removal of brush, grass, keeping a 10-foot initial perimeter around your home that basically has very, very limited combustible surfaces, and then even moving that out to up to 75 feet. So there's some good public education information out there, which we can try to work and put it out there through the fire department website and through social media. So, we're certainly not in this on our own, but it requires more resources in terms of the large wooded area that, is part of the town of Wellfleet.
Helen?
Yes, through you to Chief Pauly. I'm glad you brought up Dave Crary, who's one of my heroes. Red alert, he's going to be retiring soon, and I hope that if there are any controlled burns planned, that it happens when he's still here, because he's a national treasure. He gets flown to other places to help. But Chief Pauly, how well would controlled burns around here work? I know the park does some, but is there any possibility of doing it safely, given how many homes there are? This in addition to, the sensible measures that any homeowner can take, which you just went through.
Sure, and I just touched on the sensible measures, and we can put a lot of that information out there, in the next couple of months. Dave Crary is recognized as one of the nation's experts on controlled burns in the woodland areas. He knows much more about it than I do. We put the fires out. He does a combination of controlled burns and also extinguishing fires. I do not feel comfortable at all as the fire chief in starting putting any type of controlled burn policy in place initiated by the Wellfleet Fire Department. We don't have the manpower or the staff. That is an extra in itself. No. But if I may, but again, through the assistance of Dave Crary and also Josh Nigro, who is our state forest ranger, district forest ranger, they will, do these types of controlled burns several times a year, weather permitting, to help with the better control of what's out there in terms of fuel. So there's a whole science to it itself that we need to understand. Your question in terms of, certainly, I have woods behind my residence, but I also have houses that I can see on 3 sides. This really becomes an important partnership with homeowners and residential building owners to provide some of this protection for their own home. And I was just out on a meeting last week with a resident who lives off of Griffin Island Road who wanted to talk about some of these things, and Dave met me out there, and we provided some information that would help them to protect their home.
Chief, are you in contact with National Seashore at all?
Thank you.
As far as they do controlled burns and how much they do controlled burns or anything like that, or they just keep to themselves on that?
No. What they do is whenever they decide to do a controlled burn, the day before they notify and request our, it's not even an authorization, but to make sure we have no concerns with it. And then the day of, they call us, send us an email, and it also goes to the town of Eastham and the town of Truro Fire Departments. So everyone is kind of on the same page wherever the community is that the burn's happening, that both communities on either side are also as part of that conversation, so we know what to look for. As I said, or we know that it's being done. I've gone out there a couple of times with control burns just as an observer and to see how that's performed. So the communication from Dave Prairie is excellent.
Obviously, the National Seashore is the bulk of our wooded areas, so we're fortunate to have them in there managing it, and hopefully they're doing it adequately enough and keeping that area less combustible. I think Ryan had his hand up first.
Yeah. So Chief Polly, I wasn't really saying that the town should engage in controlled burning. I realize that is that's a whole different animal. What I'm kind of wondering, and why I requested this item and for you to be here, is whether or not you think it would be to the benefit of the town to try to start a dialogue with the National Seashore about this issue.
Well, thank you, Ryan. And again, I think that's a pretty good idea. I think we got to hit this from a couple different fronts from my perspective. One is to get a bigger picture of what the Seashore is planning on, what their plan is in terms of fire control and wildland management. And like I said, I know Dave's more than happy to have that conversation with us. But then also hit it from the other front of just more public education. Let them know what's out there with this Firewise program, which is really, really good program, and the research that I've done on it. And so, it's a couple different prong approach to this issue. So I think it's a conversation definitely worth having. And Ms. Wilson is correct. Dave is going to be retiring pretty soon, and I have concerns as to whether the Seashore intends to fill that position again, because it's a vital position for the Cape Cod National Seashore. I'm not saying that they're not going to, but I'd like to know what their future plans are with the most out of Cape towns that have so much of the Seashore property within their political boundaries.
Mike?
Yep, go ahead, Helen.
Yeah, so sitting in on the Herring River technical team meetings, this came up. And Tim Smith from the National Seashore said, their crew is way reduced because of the state the nation finds itself in for a variety of reasons. Dave Prairie's still there. That's where I learned about his imminent retirement. But he came and gave a whole pretty much a morning to the technical team, Herring River technical team, over a year ago or 2 years ago, because some of the vegetation management is going to be done in a very good environmental way during the restoration by burning, right? And some of it's going to be removed, some of it's going to be burned, and so forth. But here's the cool punchline. Once the wetland is restored, this huge expanse that used to be all damp and tidally, moistened every day twice, will not be a huge flammable expanse anymore. And it will be a kind of the equivalent of a very wide, very effective fire road, that a fire wouldn't jump across. So this is down the line a bit, but it's coming and it's very cool. Thank you.
Okay. All right. I think we can move on here unless anybody has anything else. I think that was productive.
Thank you for your time tonight, Chief Polly.
Well, you're very welcome. Thank you for your audience.
Okay. All right. We've got to sign the November 3rd election warrant. Can we get a motion?
I move and authorize the board to sign the November 3rd, 2020 election warrant.
Helen, second.
Roll call vote.
Helen, aye.
Janet, aye.
Christina, aye.
Ryan, aye.
Michael, aye. Motion carries 5-0. Now, FY 2021 Select Board goals. Anything, Helen, you got amendments on there?
No.
Okay.
So, you remember like on October, what was it? September, it was the meeting that got bumped to another meeting because of the power outage.
Mm-hmm.
That was the meeting that we all got our separate goals and we'd all written them out in our various ways. Ryan was epic and very interesting. I didn't mind reading all that language. Mine was shorter. But with respect for a noble effort, what we got for tonight's meeting, first of all, it didn't include one of mine, and it also didn't use, in every case, the language that we chose to use on our goals. That's my first. I just wanted to note that. The second thing I want to say is I went through it informally, and it was very easy to do when we were looking at the 5 different lists, okay, at that previous meeting. 3 of us wanted to somehow put the whole bicycle trail thing behind us. In other words, to deal with it now, to get on it and have something happen. And we're in the process of doing that. And there were some other overlaps. There were housing overlaps and so forth. It was very easy to count without summarizing in language that none of us used. And what I would like to do is not approve the goals as they are put out in the document we got today, because again, my language is sometimes in there and sometimes it isn't. And that's true for the rest of us in some cases. And to just simply have the language in our individual lists as being what we approve, because it's so obvious when you read through them what the kind of triage is in terms of us wanting, more of us wanting to work on something before something else. In some cases, there's just one person that has a goal. And that could still be in there. It could be, we've had the communication. I just would not like to approve what we got in this week's packet with respect to whoever put it together. Thank you.
Okay, Courtney, you got your hand up?
Yeah, so I'm the one who put it together, as that's part of my job and was directed to me at the last meeting. And I copied and pasted Helen. So I didn't remove anybody's language. I didn't change any language. I put it all in there, but some of you simply put things like continued support. So your name went back next to the bullet item, So, I mean, I'm willing to do this again and try it any different way you'd like. I would love to maybe see what you'd like to think is missing or work on this with you. But I really did copy and paste from everybody's document. So maybe it's just me seeing something simple like continued support and just putting you next to that project. But however you all want this done, I'm willing to do. But what you sent me, it's all copy and paste.
Well, whatever. Let's not argue about it, but we can talk about it tomorrow if you want to. I would just like to stick with the language we all got before. And some of those things are actually already being worked on. I treasured it because it gives Maria a sense of what's on our mind. And Maria can certainly see if four of us have mentioned an issue. And that she can also, Maria, you can also see how each one of us is considering it in our lists that we did last time. In other words,
can I interrupt you for a second?
I'm done.
Okay. I don't see what you're saying here in a way, because everyone's goals and descriptions are put on here. I actually think it's a little bit more convoluted, but I think that's because what you requested was that everyone's language would be put on there, when previously it has been a sort of consolidated goal with people's names next to each other. I think that's how it used to be. So, I mean, I think, I just don't understand what's deficient here, except that it's kind of more difficult to read because everything's on there, rather than saying housing, all the things to do with housing, and then all the names of the people who support housing, or whatever, how it used to be, which was easier to read but less specific. This seems more specific, a little bit more difficult to read because of the layout, but I'm not sure how well you could do it and still comport to the way that you want to see everyone's language all put together. So I'm fine with it. Like, if you want to do it a different way, that's fine too. I'm not like dead set. I mean, maybe it just makes sense to just have everyone's goals stapled to a piece of paper, one right after each other. It's only 5 of us, so there's 5 pages. It's pretty easy.
May I respond?
Sure.
Yeah, that's what I was suggesting. We don't have to create another document. We've already got what we got at that last meeting. And I say this apologetically, at least 3, if not more, of my goals do not have the language in the few sentences I had on my goal list. So the point is, it's not that important, but we've already made the communication at that previous meeting. All our statements are very clear on those lists. Okay. And to my mind, the language here doesn't copy that in every case. Ryan's are all verbatim.
Let's just get to the bottom of it. Let's just do this. Courtney, this is my suggestion. Can you just put back our lists on separate pieces of paper, so each select board member's lists are on there, and then on there a brief broken down by their subject, like housing, whatever. So
yep, I'll just do it like last
year.
Clearly
laid out list just of each individual's. You can put it all together in one stapled thing, and then we can just approve that. I don't. It's all here, but I understand what Helen's saying. I actually have a very difficult time. I'm a dyslexic. I can't read this chart the way it is right now. I don't blame you for that. That's the way spreadsheets kind of work, and especially when there's so much text in them. But I get what you're trying to do. I would vote for it anyways, but if Helen wants to do it another way, I'm fine with that. Ryan,
whatever you all want is fine with me. I'd be glad to do, the 5 pages, and put up all that. Whatever you all want is fine. Okay.
Go back to last year when it was on one page. And
it's not going to be on one page. Ryan's was 3 pages alone, so it's not going to happen. I think the bottom line here, though, is that at this point, you've seen all of your board.
Now and shutting my mouth.
You've all seen your goals for this year. They've been in the packet twice now. We have them. Administration has them. I can just put them all together, and that's your 2021 goals.
Good luck, Courtney.
Yeah,
thank you.
Hey, Courtney, what you could do is have one single page that's a cover page that just has each thing each kind of subtopic and who supports it, like as a primary goal. So you can see that maybe 3 board members support housing initiatives or whatever, you know what I mean? And then behind it, you can just have all the detailed stuff.
Yep, sounds good.
Okay, perfect. Okay, let's
Thanks.
move on.
1 second.
Okay, go ahead, Ryan.
Yeah, I think Courtney did a good job, and I'm fine with doing it however everybody else wants to do it. But I would just really like to thank Courtney for putting this together. I'll probably keep this as a copy. So
Thank you, Ryan. You can put it on your fridge if you want.
I thought it was good too.
Courtney, I'd like it in 7 different formats, please.
Any color preferences on the paper? I'll go to Staples tomorrow.
I can only see if everything is individually colored because I'm dyslexic. So
Okay.
maybe you can print it like a comic book. Okay, next. Review and approval to the letter to the National Seashore Superintendent. Okay, so I put this on here. I went to sign the other letter. I think between the original letter that Helen wrote and then the revised letter that Helen wrote and then the amendments during the meeting, we wound up with a letter that kind of has some problems. So I didn't feel comfortable signing it. I know Janet had voiced some issues with it. So I just kind of, rather than go back and forth, I just wrote a separate letter, which I think sort of encapsulates the invitation and the things that Helen was trying to get to a little bit. And I hope that this is something that the board can look at and maybe send this alternative letter. So Helen, since...
Yeah, I'm fine with that. Did you all get my few suggested amendments, which are basically just light proofreading?
I like Mike's letter. It's concise, to the point, and yeah, I mean, I'm willing to sign Mike's letter. I felt, sorry, Helen, but I felt a couple of your edits were a little funny.
Well,
Thank
sort
you.
of like...
I'm willing, excuse me, Mike, I actually wasn't, finished, but that's okay. So I like the letter. It's fine. You put some things back in there that I had done a version of in my first letter. It's all good. We're drafting.
Yep.
Maybe a phone call to make the date with Brian should have happened 4 weeks ago or 2 weeks ago or whatever. Never mind. It doesn't matter. I replaced you write, we hope. A verb is much stronger and clearer than we are hopeful. That's just kind of syntax stuff. And then I added a phrase from the master plan in red, because I thought it was very good that you quoted from the master plan, Mike.
Mm-hmm.
That you pulled that back in there, because that's what's had me scratching my head about all this for a while. And one of the most hilarious things in the master plan is that sentence in red that I added, which is, the aim, one of the goals was to have it be a stress-free solution to this. I used the exact words. So that's the reason I put that at the end.
I don't have that.
I sent it this afternoon. Courtney, you have it? Can you send it to Mike so he can see it?
I got it. I see. Okay.
Yeah. And the other thing is you referred to, this was basically just a clarification, Janet. The route is a very, very long route. It's unclear that the issue with the already existing, not constructed for the first time, very busy gas station, which has been expanded, is right there in the, it's right in the vicinity. It isn't just on the route. It isn't, for example, down by the post office, although it would be a problem there too. So that's the reason I made that a little clearer. In other words, light edits, no real change except to add the language the one additional sentence from the master plan.
Helen, I think that changing this to an existing busy gas station has been upgraded and enlarged in the immediate vicinity on Route 6 just further makes it complicates what the reality is. A new gas station was built. It might have been Cumberland Farms before, but it's a whole new structure. I don't think we need to make the letter any more convoluted. I mean,
Mike, I'm sorry.
Technically, you're right.
I am right, because here's the
Technically,
thing.
it's a completely new structure and a gas station, so who cares?
Well, what I care is that your sentence implies it's somewhere along the route, not the problem being, the problem is that it's right there in that very dangerous intersection. But the other thing is, there was a gas station there before. And your sentence reads clearly that it was constructed, which anybody reading it who didn't know Wellfleet would say, oh, there was no gas station there and now there is one.
Well, that's what happened since the master plan was written.
No, there was a gas station that was heavily used, as was Cumberland. Oh, there was no gas station there, you're right, but there was Cumberland Farms.
Yeah.
Right? Okay, whatever, it doesn't matter. Let's just have this sent and have Courtney call Katie, who is Brian's secretary, and set up some kind of date with him for this. How about that?
Yeah, okay. I did have one error in there.
Yeah, with typo. I fixed it.
Meets all of the goals instead of the all of goals. So,
yeah, I fixed the typo in mine. So you want to take out the
upgraded and enlarged in the immediate vicinity on Route 6. I don't want to change that. It's just this clear, simple statement. We're not trying to I just don't think we need to go any further.
Okay.
If you want to add, and it most certainly will not supply a low stress travel environment. I mean,
it won't.
I know, but it's already says in here that it quotes the master plan to minimize motorized, non-motorized vehicle conflict.
So can I break in here?
It's just kind of stating the obvious. Go ahead.
So Mike's letter is very concise and clear and says what we want to do is meet with Superintendent Carlstrom. Superintendent Carlstrom is very much aware of everything that's gone on with the DCR and the DOT. And as I even said last meeting or so, just call him. But just let's get this. Helen, I'm sorry, but I just don't approve of your letter. And I wouldn't sign that tonight either, but I will sign Mike's letter tonight. Or we can just call him. But we really don't need to discuss this a lot tonight, I don't think.
Yeah, we've got a good letter. Let's sign it. Helen got the ball rolling. Now we have a good letter. Let's get it signed. Let's get Helen's excellent idea of the meeting to happen. Helen, you deserve a lot of credit for making this good idea happen. I commend you.
This is fine. The main thing is let's also request that Courtney and Maria figure out when we can meet with Superintendent Carlstrom.
Good idea.
Okay, to get it on the calendar. And
so in the last sentence, it should say a scenic trail that meets all of the goals and objectives laid out in the Outer Cape Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan. In both our copies, it's wrong. I wrote that wrong.
Yeah. Courtney.
Yeah, I think you shouldn't say all of the goals because it won't be able to meet all of the goals, just the goals.
When he comes, I'm going to ask him if he studied every single word of the letter.
Oh, he reads like that, Justina. He reads letters very carefully.
Okay, I just want to amend it to say that you will support our efforts to find a safe and scenic bike trail that meets the goals and objectives laid out in the Outer Cape Bicycle and Pedestrian Master Plan.
Perfect. Let's vote.
Okay. First, I move to rescind the September 30th, 2020 motion to send the letter drafted at that meeting to Brian Carlstrom.
Second.
Ellen, second.
All in favor?
Ellen,
Aye.
aye.
Janet, aye.
Tina, I.
Ryan, I.
Michael, aye. I move to approve the letter to Brian Carlstrom as amended by Michael DeVasto, as amended at this meeting, and authorize the chair to sign it on behalf of the board.
Second. Ellen, second.
Okay. All in favor?
Janet, aye.
Ellen, aye.
Tina, I.
Ryan, I.
Michael, aye. Okay, thank you, guys. Review of chosen applicant for building inspector per section 542 of the town charter. So I guess we'll just go over this a little bit. Maria?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'm actually going to revert to Mike Travato, who is leading the HR process for filling this position.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you know, we recently conducted a building inspector search to replace Justin Post, and we advertised it in the Cape Cod Times, the MMA website, and we also the position was also networked through the building inspection community, which actually netted us some good applications. We received 8 applications, 5 of which were qualified candidates with building inspector experience, and we interviewed all 5 of those candidates. One of them rose to the top, and that was Paul Fowler, who we're putting, the town administrator has put out as a conditional appointee. Paul's work experience is extensive. He's been a local building inspector in town of Dennis for the last 2.5 years. He's been a project coordinator for Housing Assistance Corp for 8 years, and he was a construction supervisor for 21 years. Certifications include he's a certified Mass building official. He is 2 exams away from his building commissioner certification. He has his Massachusetts construction supervisor's license. He has OSHA 10 training and a plethora of other professional training, which he's put on his resume. Paul gave us 3 references, which I personally contacted all 3 of them and spoke to them. And quite frankly, each of those references was more glowing than the next. I was very impressed by his references. And as I said, the town administrator has conditionally offered this position to Paul, and he has accepted conditionally. We are now waiting on that 14-day select board disapproval option, which expires October 22nd.
Okay. I just had a question. For the interview process, was there anyone from planning board or zoning board or health or conservation or anyone that works with the building inspector in town on a regular basis? Or
No, it was conducted by by Maria and myself.
Okay. I am a little uncomfortable with not having, somebody who is particularly in Wellfleet, works with the building inspector and knows the sort of intricacies of that town department, not being sort of having input in the hiring process. That I think, both the town administrator and assistant town administrator are still relatively new in town, and it's a complicated job. And particularly with our zoning bylaws and with our sort of history of conflict and negotiation. And I'm not saying that that Paul's not the right person. Just process wise, I really would have preferred to have somebody involved in that interview process that that sort of works with that department in Wellfleet on a regular basis.
So if I could just add, I did speak at length prior to the interviews with the planning board chair to get his take on what he felt we should be looking for in a building inspector. I did speak with Justin himself at length to try, before he left, to try to get a good gauge on the qualifications that would be most important for Wellfleet's building inspector position. So we did at least vet those out.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I may.
Sure.
I supervised a department of 35 people who were involved with inspections, permitting, and licensing for a number of years. You know, I'm looking for folks that are able to provide some leadership to sort of how things are set up down there right now. So, you know, you might have some idiosyncrasies, but it's not that unique. You know?
Sure. Yeah, I'm not trying to say you're not qualified to do it. It's just, you know, Wellfleet's a tough place sometimes, especially for a building inspector. And I appreciate that Mike got the input from other people, just, you know, people who are sort of ingrained in the community already and in that department and work with them on a regular basis. It's really just a process issue for me. And I'm happy to hear that Mike got input from Justin and about, you know, sort of what to ask, what maybe there are maybe deficiencies in that department right now that could, you know, be like a certain strength is needed in that particular department compared to every town's different, every department's different, every office is different. So, you know, that's just one thing that kind of concerned me. So, but you know, I'm pleased to hear that there was some input, at least from the chair, but I think it's good to have someone sit in on those interviews generally, you know, from whatever department or even from the zoning board in future hirings. Justina?
Yeah, I'll back up Michael's process comment. It's common hiring practices to have a second round of interviews. It doesn't have anything to do with Maria or Mike's qualifications or background. But certainly I'm reading that there's a full-time employee and 2 part-time employees. It's standard practices for the candidate to meet the people that I'll be working with to assess the chemistry and general fit. And then I agree with Mike about the zoning board and planning board because Maria will be seeing far less of the building inspector, we hope, than the employees he supervises. So I agree. I think that, Mike, it sounds like you did a great job reaching out to the relevant people. And I also appreciate the transparency that of the resumes that you provided me and confidentially. I feel that the candidate that was selected certainly stood out perfectly reasonably against the resumes that you and Maria vetted, and I appreciated that transparency. I have only one comment from looking at the resumes. I was surprised to see a qualified local resident in that set of resumes and a qualified local candidate, moreover, who has significant Wellfleet zoning experience. And certainly a local candidate has the advantage of being boots on the ground and ear to the ground. And so I wondered if you might tell me a little bit about your feelings about that in general, or not. I mean, I understand the candidate has been selected.
Yeah, it's difficult talking too much detail about maybe personnel, you know, as far as the way the interviews went and impressions and that sort of thing, in a public venue like this. Certainly would want to call out any individuals. The individual you are referring to does not have, I will say, their building inspector certification.
Certainly. So that was a factor.
That certainly was part of that decision.
Certainly. Well, I wanted to thank you again for the transparency that you provided me, and it added to my confidence level in the selected candidate that you and Maria put forward.
Ryan?
Yeah, I was kind of looking forward to this tonight. I was looking forward to meeting this hire. It's customary for people even applying for boards and committees to join when they join the town, for them to appear before us so that we can have an understanding about who they are. The building inspector is a critical role within the town. There have been many lawsuits about building permits that were issued or not issued. I would have really liked for him to appear before us tonight, at the very least, so he could introduce himself to us, especially in this day and age when we're doing the majority of these types of meetings virtually. So that's my thinking on it. Thank you.
Helen?
Hi there. I too took advantage of the ability to read the 5 people, and I understand perfectly why they made it to the pre-final stage. And their confidential information I'm keeping to myself, even insofar as their sex goes. 4 of them, however, are only local inspectors, which is the technical term. Only one of them is actually a building commissioner, inspector of buildings. So I have a question about the person you selected, which is Mr. Fowler. 2 exams away from becoming a building commissioner. How much does that represent in terms of years or time? And then I have a follow-up question about that.
Sure. That's strictly a function of COVID, unfortunately. Some of the scheduling for exams, as you can imagine, at the state level, have been delayed due to COVID. And so probably several of these individuals might have been closer to, if not received their commissioner certification by now. Paul among them. Paul was on track to get his commissioner exams done by now, but scheduling at the state level hasn't allowed it. So he's ready to jump in as soon as the exams are available for him to take.
So here's my follow-up question about that. When a person is just a local inspector, and that can be a very highly qualified person who does an excellent job, goes out on site visits, knows what he or she sees, is thoroughly familiar with the zoning bylaws and everything that needs to be thought about. But if you're not a building commissioner, inspector of buildings, you have to then go and have whatever work you've done, I'm not sure what the verb is, certified, or somebody has to sign off on it.
Yes.
And I'm just wondering who this person is going to be using for that. In other words,
we have mutual aid, for lack of a better term, with our neighboring communities, including Provincetown. As building commissioner, who is at will, available to help do any final sign-offs that couldn't be done by a local inspector. And actually, Justin's moved next door, to be honest with you, and he's only one neighbor, one town over, and he's a commissioner. He's got his commissioner ticket as well.
Okay, so I just hope this person's commute isn't too long, and since he's the finalist and we know his name. Okay, so the thing I want to say is, he seems like a really good candidate. And I wasn't worried about Maria's ability to pick through applicants because I haven't memorized your resume, Maria, but I'm pretty familiar with it. And I thought, at least you have some good sense of what this kind of job consists of. And thank you very much for doing this kind of search, which is not easy. And we'll see how that works. And to address something Ryan said. So Ryan, I want to meet the guy too, but I think traditionally and sensibly, you see, he isn't hired yet. You know, we have to meet on this choice of the town administrators. So the next meeting he could come in, you know, but to have him come in tonight and then maybe we wouldn't have approved, you know, the appointment is not, it's kind of ugly. And that's why references and so forth are useful. And the fact that Mike called the references really lifts my heart. But I'm unsurprised because of Mike's thoroughness. So thank you. It seemed like there were 5 good people, but I think that although I was very torn with regard to one other applicant, I think this person also has a lot of computer skills. The last thing I want to say is I have been more than just acquainted with, in fact, friends with, in particularly 2 cases, the last 3 building inspectors we've had here. And I checked with one of them about how much paperwork and how much work on a computer there is. And there's not a lot, but there's enough, and it has to be done really carefully so that whoever is in this position, because it's such a small department, you know, has to be really able to do that well and quickly. And this guy has the ability to do that as far as I can make out from his resume.
Okay.
So thank you.
Janet?
I have my hand up. Sorry.
Yeah.
Well, I'll just add since everybody else is adding. One of the things that the past building inspectors always are uncomfortable with is enforcing the bylaws. And I wasn't going to stick my nose in it, but they never like doing that, right? Nobody really likes enforcing the laws in Wellfleet. Right, Chief? Whatever. So, but that to me would have been something I would have asked him about, but I think he'll do fine. And with our support and the town's support and the town employees' support, he'll do well.
If I could just add, Jane, if I could just add that Maria and I specifically asked that question.
Did you? Oh, good.
And he does it in Dennis currently, and he certainly understands that's an important part of the job and is fully prepared to do it.
Yeah.
Chief Polly?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just was not going to weigh in on this, but I decided that after I received an email today at my solicitation to a fellow fire chief, we're a pretty tight group of people, if you hadn't figured that out already. And so when I saw the name, I made an inquiry and received glowing remarks and recommendations about this candidate. The fire inspector, Captain Capello, myself, and the building inspector talk on a weekly, if not couple, 3 times, 4 times a week, based upon joint inspections, health inspections, fire inspections. Oftentimes, Joe Capello does the fire inspections, fire prevention inspections with the building inspector. They ride together. So if it helps the board, everything that I've gathered about this candidate has been excellent feedback. Works well with the community, works well with the builders, has a real good fit, and we all know how important that is. So I'm just going to offer that to the board for your consideration.
Thank you, Chief. Okay. I suggest we take no action.
Yeah.
That sounds good to me.
Okay. So
Thank you, Maria.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, on to select board reports.
I've got one. So last Friday, the Cape Cod and Island Selectmen and Councilors Association had their meeting. And they're always really good meetings. I know they're early in the day, like 7:30 in the morning, but they're always really informative because it really brings representatives from the entire Cape together to just talk. So one thing that I thought was really interesting is Falmouth banned nips this year. And Mashpee is having it on their warrant next time. And we took a very casual vote as to how many top towns consider banning plastic. And everyone agreed that I think 11 or 12 towns out of 15 towns were represented. And the select boards at that meeting, all the select people at that meeting all agreed that it might be time to ban nips. So I'm not throwing that out there for a vote or for anything else, but just that that's on the agenda. And that's it.
Okay, Ryan?
Yeah, so I've been in contact with the Rights Public Access Committee. And there's nothing really pressing right there, but eventually they are going to need support for different things that come across their desk. They're not there yet, but you know, they're and at some point there's probably going to have to be a larger discussion with them. Thank you.
Okay, Helen?
So a couple of things. I went to the day-long Herring River technical team meeting, and, you know, the permitting is, you know, ongoing. They always talk about funding. And it's exciting because the rubber meeting the road is happening sooner than it was 3 years ago. Let's put it that way. I went to also a Shellfish Committee meeting, and they need, they have two members who have left. One because he doesn't wish and can't, you know, use the technology to attend meetings. And the other has other issues. And we need to be looking for people who could be on it, who have an interest and are willing to apply themselves, or who fish. But three of the best members who were on it when I was on it were people who really learned a lot about it, or already knew a lot about it, and weren't commercial shellfishing people. So I don't stick my nose up at anybody that's willing to inform themselves and to reach out and to get people to come to the meetings who can provide information, even if they're not on the committee. The third thing is something I'm bringing up that was ongoing research and that I worked on a lot last year because of the purchase that the town made for the 254 acres, intertidal acres, and the beach over on Indian Neck. And I would like to formally ask the board, although because I'm not just on a committee, I'm on the select board, I think I could have done this without bringing it up. But I want to report to you that I would like to confirm by speaking with town council, who may be at this point, I hope, more aware of court cases, about the status of the roads in the subdivision that we are now a member of, because we own a huge lot in the subdivision that used to be part of a very large piece of land. And I would like to be able to know legally what the status of our ownership permits us in terms of use of the roads, which brings me to my last report. In other words, I'm saying I have a very few questions about this. They're very clear questions. I've done a lot of research on it. I used to be on the planning board. I used to be on the zoning board. So I know a lot about subdivisions, or quite a lot about subdivisions in ways. But I do need contact with town council about a few more things before, so that we know about this legally at this point, because our status there may have changed quite a bit, or maybe it hasn't. I talked with Harry Turkanian about it before the purchase. So I'm sort of asking, putting that out there for the select board to report to you that I've done this work. And I'd like to just clarify a little more about it and then bring it back to the board. And this segues into, I also went to a public access committee meeting, and, you know, they're getting their stuff together, and they're going to be going through one access point after another in a kind of very methodical fashion, and they're getting their ducks in a row. And I'm very impressed. They're starting with the Lieutenant Island situations. There's more than one. And that's the end of my report. Thank you.
Okay. I don't have a report. So on to town administrator's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And related to the discussion with town council, I recommend that we have that conversation with the entire board so that everybody can benefit from hearing their legal advice on what the town's status is, whether it's changed or not. And I'd be happy to arrange that in whatever fashion you wanted, whether that's
I think we can do that
on your agenda for discussion, or posted meeting where you're all welcome to participate.
I believe that that's suited for executive session.
No.
Yes, for confidentiality purposes. We don't need everyone.
I think it could go either way. Yeah, I think you could.
I disagree.
But
I disagree with that. And
it should probably be a conversation where you're all able to participate.
Yeah, I agree with Maria. It needs to be
through you, Mike, to Maria. Hold on. I agree with that. I agree with that, Maria. I just didn't think that everybody was going to be that interested.
Well, it involves the whole town.
Yeah.
First of all, but
yeah, it sets a precedent that I think we need to be very aware of. So
the thing is,
and there's been some policies on how involved the town gets in matters dealing with private roads. So I think it needs to be a conversation that, you know, everybody has a chance to put their questions together beforehand, and you know, that everybody gets to hear and get clarification on the advice certainly before staff is directed to maybe roll something out that might have implications in other areas of town.
Oh, no, there are potentially, Mike, may I speak?
Yes.
Yeah, anyway, this is basically just confirming something which is probably true. So it would certainly, which is why I suggested that I do it and then bring it back to you all for a report. But certainly, I was hoping that Maria would sit in on it with town council, but I don't care. You know, if you want to have it for agenda item, the more the merrier. I mean, that sounds good to me too. It's just, you don't want to, there's so little that still needs to be determined about this. And I was just hoping for one of the lawyers at KP Law to say, oh yeah, that was settled in this case. And I think that's exactly what we're going to find. I'm basically looking for confirmation for something. But, you know, by all means, let's have an agenda item with somebody from KP Law who knows about it. And Maria, may I speak with you about this a little bit after the meeting at some point?
Happy to chat with you tomorrow if that works for you.
Tomorrow is Wednesday. Let's do it at your convenience. Thank you.
Okay. On to the administrator's report. We've gone over the issues related to COVID. Just a couple of things in there that I wanted to bring your attention to. We're working with Eastham's Let Us Borrow, and he's been doing a fantastic job of helping us out, getting through the last bits and pieces for our tax rate filing and sorting through some of the information in the computer system. And you know, much thanks to the town of Eastham and to Miriam Spencer for her due diligence and going through and picking through to make sure that we have everything that we need to answer all the questions for the Department of Revenue. The other thing that I'll mention on a financial basis is we will be coming back to you after having met with our financial advisor to talk to you probably at your next meeting about some short-term borrowing to sort of get over the hump that happens while you're waiting for the tax bills to come in. And the other piece related to that is, you know, we've instructed staff to sort of be real cautious about expenditures that they were thinking were going to be reimbursed by the state for COVID-related issues, because we're finding that that's probably not the case. Things like porta potties that, you know, we thought maybe were going to be reimbursable are not. And so there was never any appropriation related to COVID. Folks were just taught to, you know, told to do what they needed to do as far as spending goes. But we're going to build up a pretty good sized tab for things that we should probably just, you know, think twice about whether we need to spend them or not. You know, there's obvious things that we have to do, PPE and, you know, personal protective equipment and such. But just so that you're aware that we're sort of racking up some good chunk of change on some of the things that we've just had as expenses, unexpected, that will now need to be accounted for through departmental budgets or some other form later on, because there is no line item that's been added for COVID. The other thing I wanted to mention to you, obviously the building inspector position. I appreciate the review of that. I will be advertising here shortly for the town accountant position. Be making some relatively minor changes to the job description and also probably the title to make it more appealing to a candidate to come out this far on the Cape. Have had good discussions with some of the most well-known accounting representatives doing municipal work and some folks on, you know, organizational development about what exactly that position looks like, leaning towards one who's at least in title and in supervision of staff over time, more of a finance director / accountant, so that we can try and get a little bit more focused and having staff work more closely with somebody who is more akin to a department head rather than working on their own individually on separate financial matters. But we will be putting that together so that we can get that position advertised real soon here. And that's all I really had.
Hey, Helen?
Yeah, just Maria, you said under meetings, it's September 21st, Herring River Board. Is that the Friends of the Herring River?
Possibly. It seems like I've been in numerous meetings relating to Herring River, and if I put the nomenclature down wrong, that's probably correct.
No, there's no wrong. It's just there are all these different clumps on the Herring River, and I was wondering which one you'd met with. It's not important. Thank you.
Ryan?
Yes. So the meeting before the last one, so not the really short one, you said that you would be sending a memo to the select board in regard to the dismissal of the previous town accountant. I haven't seen that memo being sent. Has any other board members received a report on it?
Wasn't specifically related to the termination. It was related to going forward. So, really looking to give you a better sense of some better options for what you have. I was not going to put anything in writing that had anything to do with a personnel matter. I still don't have that intention.
In that meeting, you said very clearly that you first that you sent a memo, and then
No, I had sent an email, or thought I had sent an email related to the change in staff levels there, but it was no memo. Yeah, it wasn't a memo. But I'm happy to once we look at the job description more clearly, considering also some advice that we've been given, send something to you related to the changes to that job description.
Hi, Mike.
Yep.
Hi. So Maria, I remember thinking that there was going to be some information coming in the same way Ryan did, but the thing, we're all getting used to each other here. So at least the last 2.5 TAs, when there's an event like that, right? It's your purview, okay? But we have sort of gotten used to, some of us for longer periods of time than others, getting a kind of dose of information about it that can be labeled confidential. I mean, there's certain things you shouldn't say, and you're very aware of that kind of discretion. But it's not like, oh, you did something wrong in my mind. It's that the norm was that we would have, the 5 of us would have some sense of what happened. And that's just what I was responding to. And then when I didn't get anything, I thought, our lives are in some ways a slow train wreck here. And I just thought, it didn't happen, it slipped your mind, whatever. But I'm putting that out there for you to consider, right? Which is different than saying this has to happen. In the future, it's the same way we get something from Chief Hurley if there's a major event, or when we had this weird ordnance thing that happened where somebody discovered a whole lot of buried bombs and stuff. We got something from Chief Polly about it, just like a little report on it. And it's just much appreciated. That's all.
Yeah, understood.
Yeah. You sent a very brief email, but I was like, what happened? So that's all I need to say about it. And I'm saying it, I hope you pick up on, I'm saying it in a very good natured way.
Appreciate
okay.
It.
Okay. Anyone else? No. Okay. Topics for future discussion.
Okay. Me again. So, shouldn't we be voting on whether or not to do the short-term borrowing thing at the next meeting?
We plan to bring it forward to the next meeting.
Okay.
Certainly a great deal of computation that needs to go into determining how much we need to borrow.
And future concerns. So, the superintendent, park superintendent said he was up for meeting with us, at that last powwow we had about the whole bike thing. And we're now going to send the letter, and Mike's going to sign it, and it's going to go zooming off in the mail. And do we want to have this on one of our regular agendas? Do we want to have a special off-schedule meeting?
I would like to have a working meeting for that meeting.
Okay, well, I would
I like
be
to
up
call
for
them that, but whatever it is.
Yeah, so
A work session, a working meeting is what we usually call them. And I'd prefer to do it that way because it's a single agenda item. It's not caught up in our regular meetings. And, it's going to kind of have to be around when he can meet also. And then there's limited sort of public participation. Usually we don't have public participation in those settings, but we can allow it, but mostly because it's just a single agenda item where I think we can actually get somewhere, we're not trying to get.
That's great. And I call them off-schedule meetings, whatever they're called. They're just normal open meetings. It's just dedicated in a way and it's off schedule. Call it a work meeting. I don't care. So, but the reason I'm bringing it up is this. I would really appreciate, in terms of my time and with respect for everybody else's time, if Courtney could try to pin down at least 4 or 5 different possible dates so that when Brian Karlstrom is contacted, he has a sense of choice. And maybe that won't work for him. Maybe he'll be, out of the country for a month. I doubt it. But do you see what I'm saying? In terms of having this happen quickly, I think that it would be good if Courtney could give us the option of, choosing, because there are 5 of us and 1 of him. He may want to bring Jeff Sanders along, but anyway, you see my point.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. Janet, I think you had your hand up next.
Yep. I just have a request. I asked this last year, and if Courtney's still on, the Shellfish Advisory Board is the only board that regularly sends us their minutes. And it would be really appreciated if we could get the minutes of all the boards. And it doesn't even have to be anything more special than just adding BOS at wellfleet-ma.gov, that the secretary sends them out. So that would be really helpful. Thank you.
Thank you, Janet.
Ryan?
I'll let Justina go first.
Hi, Ryan. What a gentleman. I wanted to put the wastewater management committee update question specific to oysters because it was clear that it's not one of Scott's technologies. And I think many of us still have questions that to build consensus, it would be good to answer. And I'll reach out to Kurt Felix and see. I've already talked to him about doing a meeting like that. So.
Okay. Ryan, go ahead.
All right. A couple things. One that I keep saying is the fuel tanks at the marina, where that project is, and if we can get it moving along. Another is the right of way for the solar array at the dump. I would like to know what its status is, and if we should be taking any actions to accelerate whenever it might be actually connected to anything. And a follow-up with the seashore on fire management doesn't have to be right away. And then I don't know. I have questions for another committee, but if they answer them fine, then I'm good. So that's it.
Okay. The solar array. So I asked Maria at some point about what was going on with that, but then
we'll give you an update on that. I've seen some communication from council on that, so
I think
I'll get back to you that we can do that at a future meeting for sure.
Yeah, Dick Elkin reached out to me and he told me that the town took it by eminent domain a long time ago and then they never filed it in land court. So it's just a matter of filing it, I think, and it's just taking forever, I guess. But that's what I was told. So we'll see. I have one, and that is the stairway from the Historical Society to the town hall parking lot. This has been they've been patiently awaiting some sort of I don't even know. I don't even remember exactly what happened. We wanted town council to look at different options. And as far as I know, I followed up with Dan a couple times before he left, but as far as I know, that was never looked into. COVID hit. I don't know exactly what happened, but those guys have been patiently waiting to build the town of Wellfleet a free set of stairs to traverse from one area to the other. And I don't see, well, I'm not going to state my opinion, but let's put that on our next agenda because, and it would be good if we could maybe look into whether we can just lease them that area for like 100 years or something for $1. It's just a pathway that's used already.
Mike, you know what? I'll try to look up the minutes, or maybe Courtney, who's better at it, look up the minutes and see what we decided. I think we did want town council to just draw up something, or do you remember, Courtney?
Yeah, we're in the process of reviewing the minutes in Dan's old files and
okay.
circling back on this. But yeah, we did want it to be reviewed. I'd have to read the minutes, but I'll send those to you this week.
I don't think it needs to be very complicated.
No.
Okay. So that's all I have right now. And then I'm going to put on here, back on here, media policy, even though I never get to it. But
yeah,
on there, I have it here somewhere, a amended version that
Mike,
run by. What?
if we wait long enough, I'll change my mind.
I think I sent you a list last week, and many of these were on that list of topics.
Yeah, they're recurring things.
I've actually already changed my mind.
There's a big old pile of stuff we have to do. So let's just call that good enough for now and move on to correspondence and vacancy reports.
Mike.
Yep.
So we got a very good email from Kathleen Bacon, and that taken in at the same time as my watching a wonderful documentary film by Irene Payne called Access to the Sea. I think isn't Ryan, that's what it's called, Access to the Sea?
Yeah. Wellfleet's Ways to the Sea.
Yeah. This is about Chiraldi, a wonderful chef, a wonderful restaurant, but guess what? He blocked off with cement, thingies, something which is a town parking lot. And moreover, apparently that side that's to the left as you face the water was a way to the sea. There was a way there that you could go out on the beach. And of course, the huge septic system is there now. But when we approved back in the spring, we looked at what Chiraldi submitted. I don't remember it being broken off, blocked off. And I've got the map in my head. Maybe I'm wrong, but I remember, I think there was some discussion of you have to be able to park in there and go through there because the town owns it. So that was a letter from Kathleen. And then there was a communication from Jerry Houck. Maria, he was on the select board for years and years and years, and he retired before you came on this spring. And he wanted me to bring up, so I'm treating this like correspondence. He didn't want to write a letter, but he asked me to bring this up, which is for the select board to possibly weigh in on the fact that AAA closed its office on the Cape, which it creates a hardship for people that I hadn't even been aware of. You could get eye tests there. You could get your license re-upped. They do a whole bunch of other systems, services for people that are particularly useful for older people who the long drive off Cape to the nearest other AA office.
Is this for future agenda items? Should we talk about it then?
No, this is correspondence, Janet.
Of course.
And I'm taking a liberty because I'm just bringing it up that Jerry asked me to communicate this and to ask us if we consider writing or contacting AAA and saying, hey, we really need that office in Yarmouth. Okay. And then the third piece of correspondence, I think we all got it. It was copied to all of us, was from Ginny Parka, because the MSI situation, is sort of raising its head again, apparently. Did we all get that? Or did we all read it?
I didn't get that.
I didn't either.
I think it was copied to us all. I'll send it. Anyway, sorry. Okay, that's it. Just those three things.
Just as far as the Ciraldi thing, just to jog everyone's memory, what we approved was the use of town property over there, and it was contingent on compliance with the fire department and the health agent, and the fire department required those areas to be blocked in order to use it. So,
Yep.
and then the other thing is that the access to the water there is not blocked. They actually repaired the stairs and then built a split rail fence on their own dime along that wall, which has long been a liability for the town to have a 4-foot drop with no fence or rail. So, and that was also required by the fire department, but not paid for by the town. So I just want everyone to know those facts, and that the delay was that he was waiting for the contractor to remove them, which was something to do with the contractor allowing them to be kept on the premises and wanting to move them all at once for all the restaurants at no charge to the restaurants. And having spoken to Ciraldi, he said that he was just going to have them removed off the premises and not request them to be kept there because it's town property. So he would have to pay to have them brought back. Chief Pauly has your hand up. Maybe it's about this.
We're sort of going off the open meeting law restrictions.
No, I'm not making an opinion.
No. If I may, just real quickly, just to remind the board, when we went into the outdoor dining discussions and to try to streamline that process for the restaurant owners, there was a real concern of mine about making sure that vehicles could not go into the dining area and cause, harm or damage or hurt patrons. The chair already has, discussed this. I mean, I'm more than happy to go over and talk to Mr. Ciraldi and, politely remind him that those need to be removed. I'll do that if you like, or you can just direct me what you'd like me to do.
Well, Mike, through you, we wouldn't be able to do that now, but the thing is, I was just bringing up this letter that we got and in correspondence, and thank you for saying that. I have no issue with it. Thank you for clarifying it, both you and Mike. Thank you.
Okay, Ryan?
So this is kind of to follow up on something that Helen said earlier. It seems like some of the SAB members have missed more than 3 meetings or have missed 3 meetings in a row, which means that I think that means that they're off the committee. Is that correct?
4, and they haven't.
Okay. How many has,
It's just one. It's just the one.
and how many has he missed?
Well, since it went virtual. And, he showed up to every meeting before that. But it's 4 meetings unless they happen within 30 days of each other. And then, one of them, just decided it was too much and, came off it. That's all.
Has that person submitted a resignation?
No, but I wish they would.
Okay.
Okay. And minutes. Oh, we got more people with their hand up. Chief Paul, you still got your hand up? No.
No, I think that was a mistake.
Okay. All right. Helen, your hand's up too, but I think it's a mistake. Okay, on to the minutes. Can I hear a motion?
I'm looking for my motions.
Can you just do it for the September 30th? Because I'm going to abstain on that, but I had a few amendments for the October 5th. So can you please do them separately?
I move to approve the minutes of September 30th, 2020 as printed in draft.
Helen, second.
All in favor?
Helen, aye.
It's getting late. Janet, aye.
Tina, aye.
Brian, aye.
Michael, aye.
Okay, I move to approve the minutes of Monday, October 5th, 2020 as amended.
Second.
Well, so which amendment are we talking about? Are we talking about the draft or the amendments that you did, Helen?
That's also a draft.
Well, you said you read, I move to approve the minutes as amended. So which one are you referring to?
Oh, yeah, okay. I'll do that again. Sorry, Janet. I move to approve the draft minutes of Monday, October 5th, 2020 as amended.
Second.
So I have to say I disagree with part of your amendment, but I didn't print it out. Do you want me to tell you? I'll look it up and tell you what I disagree with. Oh, I think I disagree with where you say at the very beginning, the reason why we don't go at length discussing things when we first open our meeting. And that becomes, I don't know, to me, it's more of, I had it written down. Do you remember what your amendment, you should read out your amendments, Helen, because you gave us
Janet,
kind of late in the day.
Janet,
Yes.
that is exactly what I said in the meeting.
In the what?
That's what I said. The minutes are what happened in the meeting, and that is what I said in the meeting when I made that announcement.
So
and I did it in response.
Okay. All right.
Courtney, do you have a copy to read from, please?
Yes, 1 second.
But that is what I said. I didn't say what was in the minutes. I said what I amended. That may not be the rationale for some of the rest of you, but that is what I put out there when I made that announcement. And I did it in response to a number of things I heard from a number of people over a number of months.
Yeah,
So I finally decided to
I
make
get
an
why you say it. I just wanted to make sure it was in, that it was in the minutes, in the meeting. Where is it? Oh, great, I just lost it.
It was. It was. Here we go. I'm looking at it. I'm looking at so many other things too. In other words, when we've talked about this, I mean, we don't have all the time in the world, and but the only place we can talk about things together is in open meeting, unless it's an executive session. So that's the reason. That's why I made an announcement about it.
All right. Okay.
Okay. Thank you. I actually got the audio sent to me by Mia. And the rest of it, I checked with Jim, and I also checked with Rebecca to make sure that, Maria, don't panic. It wasn't a whole discussion. It was just a brief, with Rebecca, a brief minute check. Thank you.
Don't panic. All right.
I'm not panicking.
Vote.
Are you panicking?
Not yet.
Can we vote on these minutes, please, and get done with this?
So I move to approve those minutes of October.
No, we just need a vote. We already have a motion and a second.
Okay. Janet, aye. Did you hear me?
Justina, aye.
Michael, aye. Okay, thank you. All right, motion to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
All in
Helen,
favor?
aye.
Janet, aye.
Justina, aye.
Brian, aye.
Michael,
Good night,
aye.
beautiful people.
Good night, everyone.
Maria,
All
thank you, Courtney.
Okay. Thank you, guys.
Holly. Can't afford to have any more employees